Close your eyes. Throw shit. Stop. Aren't you glad you closed your eyes?
Oh damn! Ooh, whoa! Wow! Why did I do that? Please help me! Jesus Christ! Please help me! Give me cookies? No, no, no. I'm sorry. I can't give you my cookies. You'll have to harass someone else for cookies. Sorry. Sorry. No, no, no. No, I can't give you my cookies. Oh my lord, this woman is like just sucking it out of me, isn't she? Jeez.
Got a clear view, clear way of getting up. A massive, great big fucking ladder.
Oh god, I fell down. I fell down the ladder. It wouldn't let me get back on the ladder. I'm like, run, 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 and they're like, Hoi-ya! Hoi-ya!
Okay.
They're like,
I don't know how to reply to any of that.
they're fucking everywhere. I'll give you treatment at the witch's house. Okay. Oh my god, we're carrying him home. Oh my heart. Guys. Oh. We're carrying him.
Exactly one of those.
Oh yeah, they go like.
What the fuck was that?
It's the sound the dinosaurs make. This is as terrible as the smell of spotted shit take mushrooms. I don't think that's how you meant to say that word, but anyway. Up ahead is the engine room. Okay. Chit chat. Please save any inquiries regarding souvenirs. Shiitake. Shiitake? Did I say? Unless this is not sugar and this is salt. It says salt.
You can taste it. You can't. It doesn't have a smell. Babe. Oh yeah, that's no. Midnight gaming. Why would you? One of those Chihuahua puppy dogs that has a lot of butt.
No, there's none of those. Chihuahuas don't have bite. They just bark out the window at things that are much larger than them.
Spike down B. Feeling fed. One down. Enemy A. One enemy remaining. Flawless.
They really just lined up there. Honestly, can someone just like press the clip button? I don't care if you actually name it, but that was pretty funny.
I got you.
Because I like that. They just like lined up for that. Just sat there and was like, okay. Sound does a cookie bake? Nom 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 nom. We can defuse that. What are we doing? Oh wait, no, we're planting. Never mind.
There.
Oh my god. No. Nobody clip it. Don't do it.
I should have so gotten that. Why didn't I not get that? Oh, why am I
Do you
not?
have any other guns?
Yep. I was just trying not to
Did you
use.
just skedaddle them?
I actually did!
No, revive the good one first. Yeah, so revive Connor.
Like shove it in my face like this.
Yeah. Close your eyes. Throw shit. Stop. Aren't you glad you closed your eyes?
Oh, honey. Hello.
Filipinos! How is everybody? I feel like my microphone is very touchy today. Touchy. Okay. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. We're going to be playing some Final Fantasy. Continuing on our Shadowbringers questline. I have done quite a bit of it off stream, but I thought I would stream some of it because it looks like it's kind of getting to quite an interesting part of Shadowbringers. So the start of Shadowbringers was a bit meh, but the last few quests have actually been really interesting, and I want to know who the Exarch is, and I really hope they tell us soon because I feel like we know him, and Law has also told me that we do know him, and so spoiler alert for those of you who have not played up to Shadowbringers. If you don't want spoilers, don't watch, please. We did. Well, wait a second, in case anybody decides they don't want to listen to my rant about things. Okay, so we found Minfilia, which is really cool because Minfilia, it was like one of my favorite characters, and then we learnt that Minfilia is not just Minfilia, and that was really cool. So we are now going to continue on. We have just gotten to the Fairy Kingdom, and we're going to talk to Thancred and get some more quests. We've literally only just gotten to Fairy Kingdom. I did, before I logged out last, I did run around a bit and explore and grab the Aetherites for all the 3 towns in this area, just to make my life a little bit easier if I need to teleport around. And because I felt like it. So yeah, let's get into it. Paris, thank you so much for being first. I hope you're doing well. Love you. Eating me with all the cookies. We actually have some new redeems over on Twitch if you guys view over there. We have some redeems of putting Cookie in jail, a 5-head redeem, change outfit redeem. So I have the black outfit, blue outfit, Cookie outfit, and a purple outfit, all with their own interchangeable monster hats as well. And also for Christmas, I can't show it to you guys yet, but for Christmas we have a new outfit coming with a new hat, and I'm really excited about it because I'm not gonna lie, me and Paris absolutely cooked. It was amazing. It's amazing. Like, I love it. For real. For 400 cookies, you can throw things at me. If you spend a bit more and you spend 800 cookies, you get to knock me out. So if anyone wants to do that, you totally can. I will be redoing the health bar as well along the bottom when I end up getting time. I've just been so busy. No, not in jail. I don't know why you can't put 2 jail cells on like you used to be able to, but that's okay. Why you gotta put me in jail, dude? Dude, what did I do? What did I do to you? I didn't do nothing to you. Oh my goodness! You're making my head so big! Oh my goodness. Lol! Thank you so much for resubscribing at tier 1. Subscribe for 25 months. Let's go. Why is the cookie jar so full? Not meant to be that full, but that's fine. Oh my goodness, the aliens are coming! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Don't take me away! Law, you caught a fireball? How do you get a fireball underwater, Law? Are you a magician? I mean, I know you're a really good librarian, but... Hi, Eldrafin! Can't say long. Yes, no, understandable, but thank you so much for coming and saying hello. I do appreciate it. Don't worry, I have not started yet. I will say before I start so you can click off. How are you? How have you been? Magic? Dragon magic? Maybe Paris should stream too, Winky Face, because she's like so much earlier in the in the quest line. Doing good. I've reset my progress in really good English. Path of Exile again. Oh, nice. Very nice. Me? Yes, you. Because then, like, those that have gotten the far could watch me, and those that haven't. Yeah, I was saying the other day to Lord that you had said that you were interested in potentially making a character on Oceania. Is your stream night? It's okay. Then Eldrifin can watch somebody. POE? What's POE? Oh, Path of Exile. I'm not the brightest sometimes, sorry. Silly me. Yeah, Laura and I were saying we'll make a free company with us and Paris and oh my goodness, it's a floating cookie head. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh no, where did my body go? Oh yeah, you can't on free to play. That's fair. Bugger. Bugger. That is very fair. I'm assuming that's Path of Exile. I've never played Path of Exile. I can I have my body back, Paris? Oh my goodness. Can you give back? I forgot how long this was. My body's been taken away. And now I can't reach the... Oh, I've got a hat now. Okay, that makes me happy. I mean, at least I got a hat. Woo! He's so happy. He's such a happy little bean. Look at him. He's so happy. We are on Sophia. Blue? Okie dokies. Blue. I don't know if it's gonna... Oh, it's not gonna transfer the... the body being taken away. And look at this. I don't know how long it's meant to be until it gives back the body to be fair. It's meant to do it automatically. Oh no! My body was taken! Oh no, now the aliens are coming! So many things are happening. So many. Goodness my. Oh yeah, it still says floating cookie head is running, so that's how long is it? I don't even know how long that is. 30 or 3 million seconds? Milliseconds? 3 1 2 3 3 and then 5 zeros. 3 Is that 30? No, 300,000 milliseconds. 300,000 milliseconds. Does anybody know how much 300,000 milliseconds is? Because I don't. I don't know how long that is. Law, you watched 5 streams in a row? You're like my biggest fan. Honestly. Like my biggest fan. 5 minutes. Oh, there you go. It's okay. It's still in the queue, so we'll do it when it's done. No stressorinos. All right. I shall go over to the game now. Feel free to I don't know. Maybe I know there's a way to turn the video off, and then you can just type in chat if you wanted to. It's need to come back? What do you mean? It's not been 5 minutes, I don't think. It's only been 4 minutes. 8:24 it says. Was when it was queued at. Yeah, we totally can. Yeah. Cost me nothing. Why go for 5 minutes? Because it's funny. Isn't it funny? To be fair, it was meant to be like a little Halloween thing, and then it just stayed. So, yeah, no. Yeah. Oh, look, I'm back! Look, here, you back. Character created for later? Well, possibly later, when you have time, right? When you have time. Well, I will, send you the link for a stream together thing. So that's already set up, and I don't have to... Oops, do it after the fact. Send invite. There we go. I've sent you an invite. Ooh. Also a reminder for anybody in my Discord currently, I do need you to go and check out the new set of rules under Candy Court Conduct. Just because I've updated a lot of the rules, I've expanded on some of the rules, I've put a little more information in different things that were maybe not like not quite clear enough. So yeah, make sure you do check out the rules, read them thoroughly, because I'm gonna not be like, oh well, you didn't read it, it's cool. No. You either read it or you don't, and you risk it and you may get in trouble. But yeah, so read through it, make sure you're doing all the right things, and you know what's kind of expected in the community, and then do the little react thing on there, and then you'll be able to access all the Discord again. Because I've made it so people can't see the Discord until they've re-accepted the rules. So, yeah. Just because we had a couple of issues recently that needed addressing, and I had some friends with their communities that had some issues. Actually, quite a lot of my streamer friends have had issues recently, so they updated a lot of their stuff, and so I wanted to update some of my stuff because I didn't want the same things happening. Prevent before, I don't know. I didn't have a cool tagline. I thought I did at first, but I did not. But yes. That is that. If you're in the Discord, just make sure you accept the new rules and you'll be good to go. Alright. So my game. You guys want to see my new puppy though? This is my new puppy. Isn't he cute? He's so cute. Look at him. He's a bullpup. And then Paris also got me Paris got these for me. I've got a lot of new minions, but this is the one I want. Summon. This is my unicorn. He's so cute. He's one I got as well. Paris bought him for me. Alright. I don't know if I need to go see my retainer or not. I don't think I do. No worries, Eldrifin. No worries. Thank you so much for coming and saying hello. I hope to see you again soon. I don't really think I can go see my retainer right now, to be honest, because I'd have to go whoop whoop and pay a lot of money. So we're just gonna leave it for now. Our retainers will be fine. This is Thancred. Everybody say hi, Thancred. Yo. Bestie. I also just realized I forgot to set my sub goal. Fix it. So that it only says 1 because law subbed, but it should not say 3 because I did not get 3 subs today. Let me just quickly fix that to say 1. 1. There we go. Actually, I want to do quick setting thing. Here. Yeah. Oh, you can only change the setting when you're not live. Oh. That's lame. I was going to turn my subs on, my sub thingies on, but I guess I'll do that tomorrow for next stream. Alright, hello Thancred. Let's talk to Thancred. He's a beautiful man, isn't he? Well, here we are, yet the pixies are nowhere to be seen. Knowing them, their games have already begun. In which case, ZiCookiie, there is a variety of plant native to these parts with a distinctive furled tip. Looking grass is its name, so called because it can be used to spy pixies, believe it or not. I'll explain how I know all of this later. First, I need you to help me find some. Oh, if a voice calls to you, under no circumstance should you respond. You will only subject yourself to further mischief. Okie dokie. Whee! Search cover find nothing. Oh. What is it that you seek, child? Perhaps I can help you find it. Nope. Too clever by half. I shall seek my fun elsewhere. I'm not talking to you, fairies. I'm not doing it. No, thank you. Final please be looking grass. Suddenly a voice rings out. Ooh, a visitor. Where are you from, pray tell? Should we talk to it? No, let's not talk to it. We shouldn't talk to it. That's hard of hearing. What brings you here? Tone deaf, how boring. Still, picking plants at our village is as good as indulging in our hospitality, and who are we to turn you away? Hee. Stay a while, stay forever. Oh! Oh my goodness. They've, like, made me heavy to, like, make me stuck here. I didn't even talk to them! It's so mean. Like, email with some trouble. Apologies for rejecting you to that. Can I assume from your presence that you managed to find us some looking grass? Yes, here you go. Yes, this is the stuff. Thus armed, we should be able to see through the pixie's veil of invisibility, and seeing them is the first step to dealing with them. Come, let's gather everyone and put... I'm terrible at pronouncing this person's name, by the way. Oriangres. No, Oriangres. I don't know. A little trick to produce. I've heard it so many times, but I'm just terrible at pronouncing. Orianja? Rianga. I don't. I'm terrible. I'm sorry. My bay. My bay. My bay. I found you. The game is over. Fairies! Fairies! They're so cute.
Oh, we're found! How did this mortal know our trick?
Wait! I recognize their souls. These two have been here before. Look! Look! Twins! How adorable!
Oh.
Play with us!
We have neither the time nor inclination to play. We have come to see Urianger.
Urianger. There we go.
Oh, yes. Urianger.
I did. I sent it to you. Do I need to resend it?
In return
I can resend it in a second.
he agreed to a riddle contest with us for 7 days and 7 nights without any sleep.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that was so much fun! We must do it again!
I'm sure he'd be delighted. Now, if you'd be so kind as to lift your spell.
Shall we?
Should we? Would we?
Oh my gosh, they're the cutest thing.
I don't know, but this is their home, so we must indulge them.
The twins want nothing to do with this whole thing.
Right, we've made up our minds. We will lift our spell on one condition: that you first lend us a helping hand. Or 2 or 3.
Okay.
Once you've helped solve all of our troubles, we'll let you see Urianger.
Urianger. He looks so defeated.
Well, there you have it. Pixie chores. I suggest we split up.
Okay. I can send you link now. They're so cute, actually. Invite. Send invite. Action already taken. Oh. I think that's I already sent you one. Hang on, I'll end this one. I'll do another one. Oh, okay. No, it's being silly. Okay. Invite. I am the spark. I have invited. I might send... Okay, did you get the one I just sent? I just sent you an invite. Hello? Hello? Okay, shared chat enabled. I did it! You're sitting on top of powers. Fairies are being silly.
Hello.
Hello.
We're all invisible for some reason on my end.
Oh, because we're here. Hang on, I'll call our group chat.
But it,
It sometimes works and sometimes
oh, is that why we
doesn't.
suddenly disappeared?
Yeah. Give me a
Okay.
second. Should hopefully work.
It actually got something to do with the fact if you can't connect to the channel yourself,
Yeah.
Fugie can't actually register. It's so silly.
Yeah, I was like,
I always forget
where
that.
are we?
I'm gonna warn you right now, I may lose in power.
Oh yes, yeah, because you've got proper
A
waves.
thunderstorm.
Yeah, that's all right. If you disappear, we'll know where you went.
Yep.
La la. Oh.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, they're making me fetch fruit for them. Lazy.
Well, then maybe they're hungry.
They are. They're hungry little fairies.
Well, why can't they? Oh.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, they're fowies. What's this one want? Oh, this one's thirsty, or their children are thirsty.
Memory.
Oh, their children are the leaf men. Okay. Alright. Not all cuckoo.
So I'm doing what I usually am doing.
Crafting.
My inventory up with nonsense. Yeah. Yeah. As always.
Says it gonna make curtains out of the seeds. Chat. Pretty curtains. Oh, Minfilia. Hey boo. Hey boo. Oh, did you end up sending those things to me, or did you forget, Varys? You forgot, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I know I needed to send them, but I don't think I'm near a delivery thing.
That's
I need
okay.
to find one. Give me a minute.
It's alright, I just saw the Moogle. There's one in this area, so I can always go back and...
Yeah, I am wondering if there's one here. Have a look.
Where are you?
It's a really good question.
Oh. She's in Central Shroud. I don't know if there's one in Central Shroud. Yeah, I don't know.
I know there's one in Gardenia, but you said Central Shroud. Yes, there is. There's one by Bent Branch Meadows.
Oh, there you go. Good
Alright, have a
morning,
look at a
Queen.
second.
How you doing?
Basically dead center of the map.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Wee, I'm planting some seeds.
I'm shit at trying to find things, so it's actually really helpful. Oh, I see it. Cool.
And they're gonna make curtains with
Good
them.
instructions.
Fabulous. That's good. I'm alright. I'm just doing lots of quests
Let's
for
drive
these
the stupid mount.
fairies.
Yeet.
The fairies are wanting lots of things today. No? What do you mean invalid time? Oh, because I've clicked off it, I think. Helping us grow flowers, are you? They'll make this house look much lovelier.
I'll take a log of how much I send you.
Okay.
I don't know where to put it, but we'll work it out.
Wherever's fine. Hello, Blank. Whee. Oh, my eye is so itchy today. Bloody hay fever.
Yeah. It's a bit like that, eh?
Thank you so much for liking the live, Queen. Thank you. We got a common triangle orange candy. Ooh. Where is this fairy? There it is. I'll go give the fairy the... Oh, tell them we're done sowing the seeds.
I don't have any really good ones, but I'll still send them.
We weren't always here, you know. We used to live deep in a lush forest. Ooh.
What are you sending?
The gold pieces, so I can sell them for more for the donation thing. Because I don't think that she'll be able to get there.
Stormblood.
Stormblood, yeah. Quite late. Late game.
Yeah, quite late.
Yeah. I said I'd sell them for... Oh, there's a person here. Who do I need to talk to?
I'm surprised you don't have 3 billion of them yourself.
I sold them because recently I asked if they were like for anything else, and someone told me that no, that like the only thing you can do is sell them. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's sad, but no worries. So I sold all of the ones that I had for normal amount because I didn't know. I was so sad when you told me. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
That's very weird.
What?
It must be
What?
a very old
What quest am I on? I am
old player that
doing
just doesn't
Fae
bother anymore.
Fairies. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, maybe.
I sent it in the mail.
Is it in the mail? Okay.
Yep.
I won't be able to go sell them yet, but I will sell them a bit later. We'll after TP a bit far to do it.
You can collect them now.
That'd be why.
Yeah, I'll go collect them. I don't know why I couldn't go there yesterday with through the Aetheryte lore, because when I went there, I had the Aetheryte unlocked, like I was already attuned to it, but it just wasn't coming up on my list for some reason. And I had to go, yeah, I had to go buy the boat first. It was really weird because I was like, oh, maybe I just never like went there and didn't have like the thing, but yeah, no, I did. It just wasn't coming up for some reason. Yeah, we're playing with fairies. We're helping. Oh, ouch! We're helping them with their things. One was hungry, one was thirsty, and one wanted flowers planted. So that's what we're doing. We're in Shadowbringers now. Level. Let me have a look. We are at level 72. Only just really started Shadowbringers, to be honest.
Or I can get a Pegasus.
Pegasus? Pegasus is...
Did you tell Blank what quest you're on, by the way?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I must have zoned the hell out.
No, I just muted.
Understandable.
Oh, I don't care.
I was just didn't want to talk like constantly.
I'm also intrigued. Well, I'm barely talking, so...
I am playing with fairies, I said.
You're playing with the fairies?
Yeah, level 72 in Shadowbringers.
Oh, I went with the fairies.
I am playing with the fairies. One was hungry, one was thirsty, and one wanted me to plant flowers.
Did you give him a Snickers?
Not Snickers.
Did you not you when you're hungry? Snickers really satisfies.
There's so many sounds and so many things happening right now. Send help.
It's supposed to be.
Timmy, thank you for resubscribing for 31
It's a
months.
Timothy.
And Paris, thank you for heart me on TikTok.
Course egg. You're the only one I spend money on TikTok.
Is it because you
To
heart
be honest,
me?
you're the only reason I go on TikTok.
Is it because you heart me?
Definitely.
I knew it.
Low key though, I literally don't go on it. I only go on it when you're live. Or I'm posting.
That's okay. Timmy, you should get Final Fantasy and play with us. You can get it for free.
Yeah,
You don't
Timmy.
even have to pay for it if you don't want to. You just download it.
Yeah, Timmy.
Yeah, Timmy.
Yeah, Timmy.
Oh my god. Oh my goodness, I think the fairies tried to turn us into trees.
Maybe you wanted to be one.
Oh, I don't want to be a tree. I don't want to be a tree, I want to be human. Well, not human. I'm a cat person. Meow.
Meow. Mosquito or something.
La la. La.
Confused.
Did you get the
Confused?
fruit? Yes, here you go.
It was supposed to be a quest in that area.
Thank you ever so much. You've saved me. Yes, saved me from my boredom. You should have seen the look on your face when the bugs came down. Tee. You've done a great service, Mortal.
Oh, well.
There's one thing we
It is
pixies are
as it
serious
is.
about. It's
I
having
don't care.
fun.
Any longer.
Wow! What was that one? Oh! What's that?
Best pop. There's
Best
things on at
pop?
the moment, apparently, like an event or something.
Oh! Thank you. It was like,
welcome.
wow! Ding, 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 ding.
But there it is. Because it's botany.
Dull and painful things. Hate them. Sin eaters are dull and painful both, so we hate them especially.
To be honest, it's fun
You
gifting on there
myrtles
because it
trying to
like,
fight
doesn't
this.
cost me a fortune.
It's true, it doesn't.
Mm.
You mortals try to fight this monstrosity, but there's no fun in that. Best to avoid them altogether, we say.
Oh.
I watched for like a hot minute the other day this live on TikTok, and it was this person, and they weren't even in the frame, by the way, but they had this like one of those, you know, those sand things where it turns and it pushes the sand. So they had one and it was set up so like if you gifted a certain amount, a different color would like come out of these dispensers and spray onto the sand, and it would just turn and turn and turn. And there was so many people gifting. Like, so many. And I'm like, what? Why? I was like...
I want to be able to stream on there as well, but I don't know that my PC will handle it.
Yeah.
Maybe if I'm doing the like Fortnite stuff, because it's not actually my computer.
Yeah.
But I might need your help with that, because I think I signed up, so I should be able to do it. I'm just not certain.
Purdy dress, thank you. Law made it. It was Law's design.
Ah.
These are my shoes.
How they changed it?
Well, made it enough for me. Is there anything Law can't do? No. Same with Paris. There's nothing they can't do, either of them, honestly.
Yes, I can. I'm so excited
There's
for
a
your
bunch of stuff I can't do.
What do you mean? You mean like not fall off a map? That's something you can't do.
That.
The bully.
It's okay.
I have literally killed myself by 4 damage. Not in a dungeon, not in combat. So there should not have been any way for me to die from 4 damage. Yet I still managed to do it.
I still need to make a TikTok about me falling off the edge when I was playing with you that day on Fortnite. That was funny. You just like looked at me and was like, okay. Oh wow, that's a lot of Oh, you gave me some gil as well to go with it. Aren't you nice? Is that for my
Yeah.
transportation costs? Is that?
So you can travel places.
Yes, I mean like my transportation costs.
Why should we do that?
Yeah, you were having a moan the other day because it was too expensive, so I've given you money.
Actually. No, that's what I should go do. I should go spend some time at a certain thing
I hope
that
it's useful.
means
Where? Is it gone again? I'm so
all
confused.
useful.
Slovenia? No? Is it?
Dorma.
Dorma.
Is that where you're trying to go? You can use your teleport crystal thing, on your top bar. Second from the end.
Oh, okay. I can find it on here.
Yeah. You wanna go to one of the ones in the middle, I believe.
I'm looking. Oh, there we go. Found it.
Wait.
Yeah, it's the white one. The white circle, the far east. I'm glad you gave me 5k. It's 1,312 gil. Wow. Oh my goodness. What? Wow.
Just let me know if you need me because I am currently
Thank you for the roses,
doing the
Paris.
Fall Guys thing. I need to get more of that stuff before it runs out.
Oh yes. I'm sure Paris would love to
I think
play the
it's,
Fall Guys
oh.
thing.
28.
I was gonna say, yeah, is it? Okay, I might come
28.
over
I
there.
think so.
Alright, where's this donation thing? Yeah, I'm so glad you gave me 5,000 because it was 1,300 to come here, let alone to get back to where I was. Alright, items. Donate. 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 I'm gonna get 7,860 from it.
Do we need to do your duty finders, Cookie?
Oh yeah, probs. I don't ever do my duty finders. So instead, for the bronze ones, instead of 100, they sell for 120. The tin, instead of 25, they sell for 30. And silver, instead of 500, they sell for 600. Each. So there you go, Paris. 7,860.
Nice.
I'm gonna type that in here so I remember. 7,860. You're very welcome. Thank you for the money back.
Oh, someone joined.
I pray you
I
visit.
just wanted to do it all by myself.
Is there a Moogle in here? No, that's alright. I'll go back to where I was. I know there was a Moogle there. In Novrant.
In Dorma, there should be, but you might not have it unlocked yet.
Oh, okay. Was I not in Novrant? Or was I in Orthard? I'm so confused where I was.
Who knows?
Ilmek, here we go. Novrant. Yeah. Oh, Ilmek there. Can't read. 1,300 to go back. So yeah, 2,600 to get there and back. Goodness me. Okay. Yeah, I don't do my duties, but that's okay, right? None of them say tank DPS anyway, except for this one, main scenario, which I never want to do the main scenario because it ended up being something really stupid. Send a letter of 7,860 gil to Revenant. Sent. There you go. Message has been sent. I've got some coffers in here. Hand gear topper. Coffer. Another one! Oh my goodness, Powers. Thank you.
That was a fancy one.
It was a fancy. They were all fancy. I haven't seen any of those.
No, that one was special fancy.
Oh, thank you.
I sat there and I did 10 times the 5, like 4 times, because it's cheaper doing it that way.
You
bought like $1.20's worth every time, because it works out cheaper. Because it's like, I think I've worked out it's like 2.4 like cents per or something.
Lovely. Why is none of this stuff any good for me? Why aren't you good for me?
Because you're a high level.
I am. That was a level 72 top, and the top I have on currently is level 80. What's that? Whoopsies! Hello, Thancred. Lovely to see you again. Oh, is he going to read it? Is he going to talk? It sounds like he's going to talk. Maybe. Oh, no. He sounds frustrated. How goes it, ZiCookiie? Yeah, we're going to slow it down so I can just read it. So, a mix of menial tasks and pranks. Yeah, that pretty much sums up my own experience. I have no troubles worthy of the name. Oh! How long are we supposed to keep at this? They're clearly playing with us. Indeed, whenever I inquire how much there is to be done, the answer is ever the same, a little. I doubt they have any intention of releasing us in the near future. Urianga once told me a story about the pixies. They're born from the souls of those who died as children, or so it's believed. Though they don't have memories of their previous life, the desire to have fun remains imprinted on their souls. And so they live only to play, keeping hapless mortals for their pleasure for years on end, sometimes even until death. In the past, when I sought to identify the true nature of ghosts, I once came upon literature examining a similar subject. The soul was likened to a core that resides in the aether, and its presence is what differentiates us from such beings as sprites and arcane entities. Upon death, said core ordinarily dissipates alongside the aether that's composed the flesh. However, it may be held together and bound to the corporal realm, either by the will of its owner or by means of certain arts. In time, the soul may regather aether unto itself to assume another form. Wow! Find newly emerged life to which to abide. The pixies may be one such instance of this. Thank you for the you're awesome. I didn't know that was one either.
I saw it. It's cute.
If ghosts are merely souls without bodies, what does that make us? I think you've become that. I didn't read the rest of that, sorry. However, the pixies may have come into being. If we leave them to judge when they are satisfied, they will never be satisfied. Nay, we must negotiate new terms with the creatures, but where to begin? It seems to me we would need at least one among them to sympathize with us. In your course of your chores, did any of you encounter a pixie who seemed even faintly amenable to reason? This one, I think. What, you knew a pixie from before? Not only are you acquainted, but you've entered into a pact? You might have mentioned this sooner. At any rate, I dare to hope this will offer us a way out without further delay, then summon this Feo you, if you please.
Ouch. I still need 3,380.
That's a lot.
What are you trying to get?
Everything.
Everything fair. I'll be there in a sec. I'm just doing these tiny quests that I've got near me.
Oh, do I have to do that as one word? No? With the chat mode in, say... don't think I'm doing this right. Oh, I'm meant to be... Oh my goodness, I'm actually so brain dead sometimes.
I'm brain dead all the time.
I'm sitting here, it's like, with the chat mode in Say, use your keyboard or the software keyboard to enter Fayo UI to summon your pixie friend at the designated location. I'm standing where I got this quest, typing Fayu, Fayu. Why is this not working? I'm typing it exactly as it's written. I'm not standing at designated location.
I love that for you.
I love it too. Did I do it right? Oh no, I've got to type it a certain way. Oh my goodness. Am I still not good enough? I'm still not good enough. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? I don't understand what I'm doing wrong.
Well, let me have a look.
I'm where it tells me to be, and it says enter Theo. Is it gonna be one word, maybe? Theo UI. No? Oh, is that an L? It's not an I. Maybe it's an L. It's an L! Okay.
You okay?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm just special.
You're adorable.
Okay, now I know how to say it. It says, please, Theo, I need you. I have to type it exactly as it says, because that's gonna make me cry.
Or be stupid.
I'll try, but it's really hard.
Oh, you.
Is that your idea of a fervent coal? A sodden log could do with more fire. Oh my goodness. Oh, is it really going to make me type all of that? Oh my goodness. Oh, loveliest of branches. Please grant me your succor. Jesus. The things this game makes you type sometimes. Oh! She's so pretty.
Late.
Yes.
I've been waiting for
I'm being yelled at by a fairy.
Waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apparently I'm late.
But my sapling didn't so much as utter my name. Such a heartless thing she is. Cold and cruel and heartless.
Oh. Sorry, Fayo. My bad.
Another self-important little brat. Just what we need.
LSA, oh my god.
Am I the only one doing this and that's why I qualified?
Probably.
That makes my life easier.
Oh!
Alright, I'm sorry. It was a joke.
Oh my gosh, the twins are fighting.
But just now you called
You always are fighting.
Oh, whoa.
Silly.
Got it. LSA said that. Oh no, Alphino said that LSA was
Oh,
a
there is
brat.
someone else. Oh. Yep. Red.
Beautiful. Why are they all green and she's red?
Well. If it isn't
I don't know why.
the mold field, it's been too long. Not long enough for you to
to think of any new games, though, apparently. If I were you, I'd be bored of myself. Now let me make something clear. That mortal is mine. No matter what you do, she will never be yours.
Feel like I need to play this game? Yes, you do, Tim.
Kinda sad.
Yes, you
You got
do.
the hard one first.
Oh, not even a bit.
Yes, you do.
You should play this game, Timmy.
Surely we can keep them.
I mean, you can't get this far on the free subscription. You'd have to pay for the game, but you should play it anyway.
And if you lay so much as a finger on my sapling, I'll scatter the contents of her bag all over your precious
Might actually
village.
win for a change.
Oh my goodness, our little fairy friend is quite intense, isn't she?
Festering food, stinky, sweaty small clothes, and all manner of
I'll
other
make you play,
terrible
Tim.
things.
I'll force you.
All right.
Definitely buy it on Steam though, because I feel like it's wildly cheaper on Steam.
Just while the others go and see
Not gonna
you,
lie.
Jay.
Either that or they've brought down the price from when we originally started playing Lore, because I feel like
They
we
brought down the price, by the way.
we paid a significant amount of money when we first played. In comparison.
Feel the heavy vernick at once.
Just say you're poor Tim, they can't force you. I mean, we can. We certainly can. I know where Tim lives. I can go to his house when he's at work and download his game. For legal reasons, it's a joke. I would not do that.
So this is the true
I won.
Ilmeg.
Hey, yo!
Nice!
It's a blendful life.
How are you feeling?
Better. I think I remember the way now.
Such torture to buy Tim a game. Very terrible torture.
Apologies, Dr. J. Shall we go and see Oriange?
Yes, let's go see Oriange!
Your lovely branch is useful, yes?
Wait, so they had just had a magic spell to make it look like crap, even though the place doesn't actually look like crap? I'm so confused. Why would they do that?
Because they're fairies and they're silly. I know, it's 388.
Silly fairies. Oh, it's so pretty. Yeah, it's actually a really good way to balance this game. I'm not gonna definitely play free first though if you're interested in playing. That way you can kind of get a feel for the game, whether you actually do want to play or not. And then yeah, go from there. For Alpha No and Alice's sake, let's be quick. It would be a shame to return only to find that they had been made to play one game too many. Now the place we seek is the abandoned manor of a nobleman and a scholar. The bookman's shelves is called after the fellow's vast collection of tomes. An agreeable habitat for our friend, I'm sure you'll agree. If we follow the path north, we should soon find the place. Come along. And Paris, Paris Law and I are going to make a free company group together. We have,
We are.
yes. You're listening to the stream. I was like, wait, did I forget to mute while I'm reading this out?
Did you forget I'm,
You're a serial lurker?
Yeah.
I love it. It's okay. I must have been muting when... I've been muting when I'm reading out the thing, because, like, there's so much reading / listening cutscenes. And so it's, like, a lot. Also, I don't want to give away too much to Paris. One day she will get this far. She butterflies, though. I'm not gonna lie, this has got to be my favourite place so far.
The fact you think I'll remember is wild.
Well, also, you might have people that come and watch because they don't want to watch me play Shadowbringers because they don't want the spoilers. So, you know, it's that too.
Everyone's in your chat, hon.
I love the energy when you three are playing. Aww. Thanks, Timmy. Yeah, we've kidnapped Law. We've kidnapped her. She's being held against her will.
This round of Fall Guys is gonna start in 20 seconds, by the way, Law.
Oh yeah, they're playing Fall
Okay,
Guys
I will.
in Final Fantasy.
Let me see if I can get into the same one as you guys. As you.
I did put spoiler alert. Is it not coming up? Did I put it too late? Like too far into it?
Oh, we're in our own separate ones.
Yep. I would like it if I was in my own separate. Yeah.
That's so funny.
I think
It's already there, Blake. Blank.
yeah, I'm gonna put it in the front maybe because it might cut off if you're like on the phone and stuff. You're not resisting that hard.
If you want.
Sorry, Laura, I interrupted you.
But I think if you're watching anyone playing a game, you should always expect spoilers.
True.
Yeah, Loki, I don't understand people that go into people's streams like, oh my god, don't tell me spoilers! And I'm like, why are you watching?
Yeah.
Oh, Mianjay! Riange!
Well, you have Shadowbringers MSQ in your title at the beginning.
I do, yes.
If
Law with the wisdom.
so, I think anyone who comes in and goes, oi, ill spoilers, they should get immediate ban just because they can't read.
Not like gonna play anytime soon anyway. You should totally also download it with the free download blank and also play.
Are you in?
To be fair, it's taken me like forever to get to where I am. So unless you played serially for like 24 hours a day, it would take you forever to get here. I'm not gonna lie, like Law.
No, it doesn't take forever. It just takes a lot of focus and knowing actually what you're doing.
Yeah.
And getting lucky with duty pops. But most dungeon duty pops, you can just do solo with the NPCs.
Full glad am I to see thee once more, my friend. And none
You do have to have patience, but
I hate this part of this bloody Fall Guys map. Pisses me off.
which one is it?
It's the one with the swinging balls.
Yeah, that one's not great. Hey, that's the one I got.
Yeah, if you join a party after that one, you should be able to get in the same ones at least.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of free time lately, that blank, that's fair. The good thing, if you do get the free one, is you're not at all, like, restricted with, like, how much you play. I feel like once you purchase it, it's kind of more like, I have to play enough this month to make this subscription worth it. But the free trial, you can just kind of play at your own pace, and there's a lot of content in it. Like,
That Master Alphino and
I'm pretty sure that guy's just signing up just so there's more people.
comfort to me. As for the rest,
Well, I don't see the reason you'd be AFK
it beginneth
at the
in
beginning.
earnest. The hunting of the Light Wardens.
yeah, maybe he's doing it for a friend or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
This map is increasing my depression.
And through them, behold,
Isn't it bad enough?
that of the 8th Umbral Calamity.
Oh my god.
But no, definitely keep it in mind for, like, obviously, if you do decide to play, the free trial, you do get quite a lot. The only thing you don't really get is, like, you can't trade with people and you can't use the market board. A couple of other, like, restrictions, but really nothing else that...
You can't chat and you can't start your own parties.
Yeah.
Oh, thank god.
Other people can send
Run,
you a party
bitch.
invite, though.
Fucking run.
So fierce, in fact, that they did begin to push the enemy back.
I ain't got time. I've got a second. I can't get this top that quick. I hate you. You suck.
And you can play it all the way to the end of Realm Reborn.
The joy they felt
Is that right?
short-lived. For in so doing, they did force the Empire's hand.
The free one you can play all the way up to Stormblood.
Oh, up to Stormblood, yeah. So all the post of the first fuse as well. So it's a lot of content at least.
Its
But
potency defied
just for everybody to keep in mind if they do want to play
once released, the
at
gas
any
took on
point.
a life of its own, wreaking untold carnage not only in Eorzea but in the provinces of the Empire besides.
Empire. Should kill all the Empire people, honestly.
From fighters upon the front lines to babes in their beds, none were spared.
Qualified.
And as the casualties became too numerous to count, so did the fabric of civilization begin to unravel. Nor did the land itself escape unscathed, for spreading from the site of its release, Black Rose brought...
I feel like you're learning a
I'm
lot.
running away for a minute.
In-
There's a limited time event.
I feel like you're learning a lot in Shadowbringers about the actual lore of the game compared to any of the other, like, well, not the game, but like the universe of Eorzea compared to the other
and swiftly did it spread as a blaze
expansions.
of straw to engulf every corner of the world. Nations worthy of the name did then cease to exist. And those souls brave and true who might have risen to restore order
They fell. That's surprising because I thought I was gonna fall.
Orianze. Not the Taru! No, they're not dead. This is pretend. Cred. Alpha no. Why is it showing us dead?
By the way, did you find out who that person is yet?
No.
were no more. For the weapon
Figure it out
spared
soon.
not one,
Yeah.
not even
I'm very excited.
Where was this event?
An
Oh,
endless
no!
age of war,
What's wrong?
begotten by the blight of
Oh, that's a
Black
dog.
Rose.
Oh, it's one where you gotta like be
Such is the
careful where you
legacy of the
stand or
eighth
something and you get
umbral
blown off the
calamity
stage.
which
I don't
did
know how you're meant to
behold.
know what colour you're meant to stand in though, to be fair.
Oh, that's like all like mechanics from dungeons and stuff.
No matter the cost, we must forestall this tragedy.
Maybe you're meant to
Oh.
only stand in red ones? Kinda looks like that might be the case.
I have labored during my sojourn in this world.
What were you
discovering in
doing?
so doing the answer to
It's
a
on the main
pressing mystery.
stage.
Yeah.
That of Black
It's like
Rose's
random colours and then you have to just like
inexplicable
find somewhere to
potency.
stand and not get blown off.
Come.
Oh. Yeah, I think it is.
Dost thou recognize
Okay.
yonder chart?
Good to know for next time.
Oh, elements, yes.
Indeed. 'Tis a rendering of the elemental wheel, such as one might find in classrooms across the source.
That's nice.
As
What's
the
it got to do with
chart
the price of
maketh
eggs?
plain, our world is composed of 6 elements,
Up to
in addition to
6,000.
which
Oh,
there
not
exist 2
6,600.
poles in fundamental
Nice.
opposition. Astral, the active. Umbral, the passive.
Which means I'm 1/5 of
As
the
a
way there.
reflection of the
I think.
source, the first naturally compriseth the selfsame forces. Yet, curiously, there is a notable divergence in their nomenclature.
I think they wanted to be
To
on
be
their own.
specific, the denizens
I
of this
think so
world
too.
employ not the terms
It is a
astral
lot if
and
you can
umbral.
win.
Thus was I moved to
161.
inquire what names said forces had been assigned. A simple question which yielded a most unexpected answer. Upon
I tried to
demanding
make a
the
cute
name of the
outfit
pole
with what I've
aligned with
got.
activity and
I don't
growth,
have much.
I was told that as life's myriad colors combine to produce black, the people of the first had called it darkness. At this, did my mind begin to race. Yet 'twas only when I asked what name had been given to the pole aligned with passivity that mine eyes were opened to the truth. Peace and tranquility being as purest white, unmarred by
Perfect
color,
circle, but
I
that's
was
close enough.
told it had been given the name of light.
That's umbral light and astral darkness, yes? I'm no
I don't really see you
etherologist,
running on
but
spot.
it strikes me that the nomenclature of the first is rooted in the generation of the two forces, while our own appears to focus on their effects.
Yeah, the way
Which
the
makes
legs
one
go
wonder,
is so funny,
have we had
actually.
it backwards
Look like
in
I'm
this
doing an Irish jig.
Yeah.
'Tis indeed a compelling question, and one which beareth closer examination. Yet what knowledge we already possess
One bad thing
sufficeth
about
to
this is
explain
just
the
that
chain
long
of events.
cute thing when you're
The phenomenon of etheric thinning observed in the source is the consequence of light, the power of stasis, flowing in from the first to stifle the movement of ether within the land. And according to Master Alphino,
It'd actually be kind of cute if we could get a big, like, little community in this game.
Within living
Our friendos.
I'm slowly convincing Tim. It's alright. Don't worry, I'm on it.
Well, that's the thing, like,
as it
it's
is
a
with
game that I
light.
feel like a lot of people that hang around would actually play.
Yeah.
We would have a disaster
It
of
is.
untold proportions on our hands. A calamity.
Not even Blank's interested, so that works.
Well,
Yeah, I'm
least we have a
trying to
better
convince him
grasp
too,
of
don't
what we're
worry.
facing.
I'm on the
Our objective,
convincing
however,
stage, that's
remains
what I am.
unchanged. We are to eliminate the Light Warden of Ilneg. Speaking of which, were you able to ascertain its whereabouts?
This is the one with the stupid swinging balls.
There's a lot of
Tis all but
talking in this
certainly
scene, my
ensconced
goodness.
Within Leargear, the castle
And
which
Porthia,
standeth in the
that's
midst of the
interesting.
lake.
Never mind, I
To
spoke too soon.
enter said stronghold, we must needs turn to the pixies for aid.
Oh no, we have to ask the pixies for help.
Fortunately, I
Bruh.
have become quite adept at courting their cooperation.
Oofed.
Henceforth shall I accompany you, and do all in my power to ensure that my vision doth not come to pass.
Keep this force match nonsense.
I love your outfit, dude. It looks so pretty. I love it. Love it, love it. Uh-oh.
Oh, I was so close to the end.
You can do it.
This bit sucks so much. I hate it so much.
My friend, ere I speak of the task at hand, there is a question I would pose to thee.
My screen hates
What
it.
thinkest thou of mine appearance?
It's all blurry.
Did you take up astrology? Oriange just asked me what I thought of his appearance, and my options to answer are: did you take up astrology? Did you lose weight? I didn't recognize you at first.
Okay.
Alright! Yeah, did you take up astrology?
Where are you going, Spark?
Indeed, though the
Yeah,
night
for
be
you,
lost,
first.
behind the shroud of
Okay.
blinding light, doubt not,
Yes.
but that the stars shine still. I have chosen to avail myself of their guidance, that I might navigate the sea of uncertainty that stretcheth before us. For a blessing, my prior studies of astrology did provide me with adequate grounding in the art. But enough of myself, let us now speak of our task.
You did okay on this earlier?
As I did mention, we are to enter Liathgaia. We must needs gain the pixies' cooperation. It's a simple matter of presenting unto them a suitable gift. I shall procure a selection of viands that shall please their palates. Tancred, pray assist me in this endeavour. Yeah, alright, buddy. Meanwhile, ZiCookiie, I bid thee obtain that which will please their eyes. In these parts there abiddeth a violkin known for its beauteous wings. The hawker shall lend thee a receptacle within which thou mayest capture a weakened specimen. I feel like I feel like I am talking like Shakespeare right now. I don't remember him talking so Shakespearean.
Stupid. I got stuck on nothing.
Nice.
Oh,
The blue
oh,
one's
voice too weak.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I hate the blue one. Sucks.
I almost offed it by accident.
Nice.
Red one I think is the easiest.
You reckon?
Yeah.
I get got on the red one as well.
Thou art returned. Were thou able to capture a hawker? Here you go. Ah, a truly magnificent set of wings. I shall treat them at once to make fast their vibrant colours. Thancred too shall return anon, upon which I shall ready all the items for presentation. Pray take thine ease meanwhile. Oh my goodness.
I swear this axe is just being annoying. Try that again.
Well pleased with these gifts. Ah, lest I forget.
Oh! Crystal.
Oh!
Let me have.
Ready.
White auracite, newly forged for thy use.
Oh, thank you.
Our mission being to thwart a rejoining,
shit.
we will most assuredly
Admit.
cross paths
Very
with
nice.
those who crave the contrary, our eternal enemies. Thus
Yeah,
did
blue
I
one
choose to
sucks.
abide in this ether-rich land,
Does.
the better to fashion a trap for the Ascian's essence.
Oh. My boo.
May I come
My
in now?
bae. My honey.
You may indeed.
She's the
Assuming you've
pretty.
finished.
She's the pretty.
Are you talking about rain?
No, Minfilia.
I
She's
did
so
as you
pretty.
That's my girl. Thank you.
Oh. Thancred, that's my girl. Ooh. I know they're like more like brother and sister, but could easily be turned into a romance.
I should probably explain. Though my body remained behind in the source, its limitations saw fit to accompany me. Which is to say, I cannot manipulate ether. I took up the gunblade for its defensive advantages, but on account of my little impairment, I cannot imbue the ammunition myself. Luckily for me, Minfilia has quite a talent for it.
You've got this one down, don't you? Jeez. You blitzed that.
Minfilia, once we set forth, we are not like to return for some while. If thou wouldst choose tomes to take with thee, let it be now.
I've got to say that's actually the easiest one.
Really? No.
Yeah, it is a bit.
Oh my god, that's my girl and head pads.
Yet
Lewd.
not add overmuch to thy burden, lest I incur Thancred's ire.
I know, right, Timmy? Woo! What's next? Hand holding in public? He's so much taller than her, too. Such an interesting dynamic.
Hast thou spoken to her of thine encounter with the Minfilia of Eld?
Oh, I never even checked how many I was up to.
Well, I suppose now is as good a time as any.
Oh,
I don't know
everything
if I
okay?
want the pants. Yeah, I don't know if I want the pants more than I want the
As you
shoes. I
know,
need to have a think about
I
that.
freed young Minfilia from captivity in Yulmore some 3 years past.
How'd she end up in captivity in the same place twice?
Journey to the south of Armor
We just rescued her from your mall, by the way, just for reference, for those of you who didn't see.
It was there that she awakened. The Minfilia of old. My Minfilia.
Oh, are we having a flashback? Oh, it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
We're remembering something. Oh.
Tell me, what must I do to bring you back?
Oh, Thancred. Baby Thancred.
My dearest Thancred, as I am now, I am no different from an Ascian. This child is but a vessel. One of many I have used that I might spread word of her enduring blessing and preserve the flame of hope. In my name, each has died, never having lived her own life.
It's actually such a sad storyline.
I will take no more.
Why does the timer keep resetting?
But what if you're suffering?
I don't know.
Your sacrifice. This isn't fair.
I don't know.
It was down to 20
I don't
seconds.
understand, Tris. I cannot. There must be something we can do.
Weird.
Tell me.
Now people are joining and leaving.
Should the day come when this child grows weary of fighting and wishes to cast it all aside, then shall I take up her burden. But should she wish instead to become the master of her own destiny, then shall I bequeath to her my all. Imbued with the strength that I reserve for rebirth, she may come to wield my powers as her own.
And what of my wishes? What of Flamine's? What of all the people who love and care for you and want nothing more than to see you again?
It is not their decision to make. It is hers. This child.
Nah, I want to use map again.
You have ever watched over me, Thancred.
Oh my goodness. So heartfelt. Stop tugging my heartstrings.
Now I ask that you do the same for her. Protect her. Teach her. Stand by her as you stood by me. There is much and more she does not know. She needs a guide to show her the ways of the world, or she will never find her own path. When the time comes, you will find me here. Until that day.
Oh, hell no.
And at the
end one.
Minfilia, wait!
What happened?
How did we see that vision? Wild.
Because you have the echo.
Oh, and that's like part of her.
And then she was gone. Minfilia, the girl, claims to have no recollection of any of it.
I think we both keep getting knocked up at the same point.
Where we came
Yeah.
from, what we fight for. But of that day, I have not spoken.
I just hate this one. I just spun myself off.
Oh, this is so sad.
With the coming of another possessed of the blessing of light, the first hath begun to rise up in defiance of its fate. The question remaineth, however, who shall take up the flame of hope which Minfilia hath borne for so long? Whether we will it or no, the choice must soon be made.
I'm sorry I took
Nice.
so long. It was so hard
I was
to
gonna say, if you can
choose.
get
In the
there, because
end,
we're running
I
out of
settled on
time.
just the one.
I didn't get there though.
Didn't you?
That is well. Now,
I
if
just
all is in
missed it.
order,
Oh, that's
let us
crazy.
set forth for Lida Loran.
Yeah, that one sucks, actually.
They're lying, literally lying to her. Isn't not okay, dude? I have too many feelings right now.
And did you want to look at the price shop?
Oh yeah, we'll do.
Whee!
Oh.
Oh gosh, this game pulls too many heartstrings. I don't appreciate it.
Oh, it gets worse.
I'm sure it does. That's why I'm so sad already, because like this is only like what 15 quests in or something, and that's already making me want to cry. I just can't believe they're lying. They need to tell her the truth. Me and me Aussie are slow because I'm in an area that I don't have speed in. Go, Aussie, go!
I bought some pants.
Ah, yes, to cover your legs.
Yes.
That's good. Ooh, fairy! We weren't expecting you back so soon. We had scarcely begun playing with the twins. That said, your gifts are truly wonderful. Let me tell you, the milk and honey and biscuits won't last a day. Wow! And the wings are the loveliest we've ever seen. Howard, thank you for the glow stick. There's some real cool things on TikTok right now.
We've got 4 people.
Ooh, that's different.
You've done us a great
TikTok
kindness,
is a different
and it's
map.
Fae custom to return the gesture. If you desire anything of us, you need but name it. Ooh, I can get silver pieces. I don't care about the food. I never use it anyway. I the likes. Like.
I'm trying to bump you up the leaderboard.
Thank you. Oh, this is so fast. I'm not even getting to read it. You might as well ask for your death. Oh, that doesn't sound like a good thing. That's what you want. Who we
Says
can
you're top
argue.
99%.
Very well, I shall speak with
Whatever
the
that
others.
means.
What? I feel that was very high, but I don't know.
I don't really know what it means. I'm a bit confused.
Yeah,
It
what?
says League D2 top 99%.
Oh, I don't know. What did we miss, Oriange? That was the purpose of the gifts. Anything you can tell us about this Light Warden? Light Wardens are annoying to kill, by the way, guys.
Oh, I think that's
Aye,
like
my
a
lady.
thing that gets drawn like every like maybe 30 days or something.
Oh. Titania. What an interesting name. It was not always so, of course. Our king fought the first Light Warden.
Same
threatened
bloody
our
map.
home. You see, fought it and won.
This map is horrible.
But all the horrible light that came out went and corrupted them, turning them into a new
yeah.
Light Warden. Now their king only in name, naught remains of the wise and just ruler that used to be. We had no choice but to seal them in the castle.
Only 3 are playing.
Magic for breaking the seal, we divided into 4 and wove each into a different relic to be kept apart until the time was right.
Let's see the 3rd one move.
And this dress is one of them. It's been in our safekeeping for years and years, but we've decided to entrust it to you. Are you sure? Of course, custom demands it. Though you're most certainly going to your deaths, we thought we should at least let you try. That way, we get to watch what happens.
Getting stuck on
Of
random
course, you can't
walls.
break the seal unless you have the other relics too. The shell crown is with the Frial, the stone scepter is with the Numu, and the crystal shoes are with the Amaro. Good luck finding them all. Fairy's not very honest. She said you're surely going to your deaths, which we'd like to see.
Well, they're fairies. Okay, how did that thing not hit me?
Magic.
Should have got hit. It's... Oh, I didn't.
Alright. Let's go, horsey. Where are we going? Away.
That time I did.
You guys like my horsey? He's red. I have other ones. Do you want to see my on my mount? I'll show you. Got good mounts. This is my company Chocobo. He's pretty boring.
Struggling.
Me. Boring.
Always struggle on this bit. Hide
Black Chocobo.
Yeah.
Bit more interesting, but still boring. This is the Choco Poco. And I got this for free from Final Fantasy for some reason. I don't even know why.
I find it easier going up that left-hand side. Yeah, left-hand side.
And this is Arion. He's a horse. With beautiful wings.
And then if the thing looks like it's going
And
to hit,
this
I hit
is
the
Managam, which is like
the directional button to go
a beast.
To try to delay my little spin for a little bit.
Yol is like a bird.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make it. Don't have time. That sucks.
Okay.
And I've got the Magitech armor. Which you can also shoot with. Hiya!
Actually having a good run.
A Manakata, which is like a plane. And we've got one horsey with a unicorn horn. This is Nightmare. This is Aethon. Then there's Xanthos. Goldfaxi. And Enbar. It's blue. Macab.
Ill crystals.
This is probably one of Laura's favourite horsey ones.
It's not given many different maps today.
Boreas. Is a blue one.
Of course, blue crystals first.
Kieran is the horse you get if you complete all the other ones. There's the white Lana,
Way over that.
which is like a hawk thing, eagle. It has white wings. And there's a rose one. It has red wings. And then there's a round Nana, which is also kind of purpley. It's this one.
I've done it, went too far.
And this one's more of a bluey colour. And this one is also
Kinda wire
purple,
on
but
this
it's
thing.
dark.
And I don't just jump out, but I just can't be bothered.
This is the Sophic Lana. It's a yellow one. Demonic or demonic. I don't know how to say that word.
Damn, they did that fast.
And this is the
That's
Firebird.
crazy.
This is what you get if you get all those Lanas.
Well, I would have had the blue crystal in if it didn't bug at me and tell me that, hey, you got hit by the thing without being actually over
This
the
is a
axe.
dragon. Midgard Soma. Big dragon.
Yeah. Oh well.
And
It
then
is as it
this
is.
is the Fall Guys mount you can get, the unlock,
I still got
if you
stuff.
get enough points. And it plays the Fall Guys music.
So when you say you want everything, do you mean literally everything, or do you just want like all the clothing and all the collectibles?
All the clothing, all the collectibles.
Yeah, that's fair. I want at least the shoes.
Do you
and
like it,
maybe
Timmy?
One of the little crowns.
He's pretty cute. He's like a rhinoceros.
Because I've already got the mount, well, the big pink mount.
I also have a minion. That is
And then I have the little pink squishy dude.
Pink Bean from Fall Guys.
I suppose I don't have too much more to get.
He's kind of hard to see in this. He's also pink like the flowers.
I might calculate mine too, hey?
He's so cute.
Yeah, I still have 2,348 to get.
We'll have him follow us around.
That was over 3,000 before.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, so you're
I'm
getting
sorry you're
closer.
now a plant.
I'll quickly have a look and calculate mine too.
Let me know when you're ready.
Oh, shall.
It's a pretty portal.
Oh, I want both
Into
of
me,
those
you
hats.
spirits
That's really
of the water,
sad.
we
Why
are
can't I
come
just
with
want
an
one?
entreaty. Not in a talk or two mood, apparently. I'm not exactly sure how the gate works. But if the four are water spirits, perhaps we should take our search into the lake. Suppose a brief deep, wouldn't it? Oh no, is he like scared of water? We know Thancred swims like a eel. Eel! What a human philia. I can swim well enough, Thancred taught me. Excellent. What about you, Oriange? I'm not sure I've ever asked. Oh no. Has he got a scary memory of someone drowning or something? Rather than swim, mayhap it be more expeditious to walk upon the surface by means of magic.
What's the identification key?
You want us to walk on water?
It's a mount.
That you should be a kindred spirit.
Oh, is that
Worry
what I
not, my
got?
friend. I know some helpful tricks, and I should be more than happy to share them with you. Together we shall conquer the waves.
Must be.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
aren't
I
we
think
a
so.
lively
The
lot?
other two
You have an
opinions.
entreaty for us, you say. An entreaty from mortals. What a treat.
Yeah, I want the etiquette, the song, the
I,
three
my comrades, and
minions.
I are on a quest to vanquish the
um,
Light Warden. To that end, we would humbly beg the loan of
That's
the
all I
sheep
really
shell
care about.
crown, which you are given to understand is in the safekeeping of your
Of
people.
course, the rest of the armor.
Oh, is
set. I
that
only
all?
got
Of course, of course. You may have it. You shall have
two
it.
parts left? Yeah.
Just like that?
Just the two
What do you want from
crowns.
us? Oh, no need to be so suspicious. The crown simply doesn't mean much to us, is all. As a matter of fact, nothing means much to us. For it's over before it's begun, and we couldn't care less what becomes of the Fairy King, nor the world for that matter. Having said that, we do so seldom have mortal visitors, and it would seem a shame not to make the most of you. Touch the untouchable gate, and come hither to our domain, Don Meg. In your tongue, it means forbidden realm. Sounds forbidding, yes? And so it should, for we are one with the water, our home wrought of ripples and waves and currents. Find your way through, give us thrilling sport, and we will give you the crown. Oh, that sounds scary at all.
I kind of like the little like rainbow house decoration too. I think that's cute. It's a Kai.
Hello.
You talking again, are you?
I've been reading. Lots of things about water people.
Did you go for a swim?
I have not gone for a swim yet. It wants me to do a duty. Do a duty.
Do you want some help?
I'll see if it pops. It might pop, maybe. Well, it sounds like an odd, like a strange in-between one. It's Don Meg. I don't know if that's very common in the roulette.
We can always try to see. If it pops.
Our powers can't come with us.
I know.
Trying to look for the aether currents. I'll wait to see if it goes.
I think I did the math right. Could be wrong, but it'll do. It's at least roughly right.
That's about it.
Could be bothered pulling up a calculator.
1230. 14. 50. 1800.
Hello, Rosebud.
So I was right. Look at me go.
Woo! Because Paris is smart. If anyone else says a different...
To be fair, I feel like if I couldn't do math like that, I probably shouldn't be doing an accounting course, so... Be a bit silly.
I mean, I've heard of bad accountants before.
So we have 5 people this time.
I'm gonna be honest, like, I joined in the, well, I had a look at the chat. The, like, chat for all the students today. There's so many people asking questions. Like, so many. And basic ones too, not like difficult shit, like really, really basic stuff. And I'm sat there and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not actually doing that bad. Because like, this whole time I've been like, oh, I'm stupid, like I've had to resubmit this and that and this and that. But like, there's people literally, yeah, like asking 20 questions on one assessment and I'm like, holy shit. Like, just try some things and try and work it out, for God's sake.
Nice.
Like, and a lot of it was, like, using zero. And they're like, oh, I can't work out how to do this. And I'm like, just play with shit and you work it out. That's how I did it. You just meddle and you, like, eventually get to a point where you've done it right.
Oh my goodness.
Like, people are just so reluctant to, like, try. Because they're scared to fail.
That's fair. I don't try anything.
It's like, no, I need to know how to do it straight away. It's like, no.
That's me. What do you mean?
It's terrible.
I don't try anything.
It's not a crime to fail.
I don't know. I think law would fine me $7,000 if I failed. Wouldn't we, Law? At anything. If I failed at something.
Why would I find you?
She said it's not illegal, or it's not a crime to fail. I said no. I mean, law would totally find me. Oh, you mean?
No, law is nice.
Oh, we only have 4 people. Not bad.
Whee! I'm trying to find the aether currents in this area, but I can't see any.
I hate Force March. And follow up? No, good.
Oofed.
Is there just not any aether currents in this area? Oh, I think this is when they changed how they did it, hey?
Maybe. There should be. But they may have changed it since then.
Yeah, I'm wondering maybe they did. Because none of this is... I don't think any of this is where I am. Omega. Interesting. Okay. I've got to work out how you fly in here. I want to fly. I believe I could fly if I just tried hard enough.
I think you can
Oh, thank God.
counterbalance.
Sorry.
Oh.
Fine.
Way. I'm going on an adventure.
You're through?
Way.
I don't think that fourth person was playing.
No, probably not. There's always one that's just sat there doing nothing.
Well, here's the thing. You just sit there at the first one, do something else, wait till the person's qualified, wait for it to load the next one up, and then leave, and then just be off again.
True.
And then just play again.
I hate this. I don't like the blue. It can piss off. Give us a new map. I demand it.
There's a
I prefer
bonus
this
for
one
this
over
fate.
the other one,
Maybe I should try and do the fate.
even though I suck at the blue crystals.
Well, there's other people trying to do the fate.
I just hope this other person's rubbish at it too.
I think they are. I think they've been in once with me before.
Oh, my fate level's too high. Okay. Sorry. My bad.
I swear it stuns you just before it even happens. Just found the red one. By the way, the person's already through there.
Yeah,
It stuns you before it even goes up. I was out of the range of that one. Oh, whoops. Wait, my crystal didn't break though.
Oh no, I think I need to run away.
Is that done?
Oh my goodness. The fate people are gonna kill me!
I didn't know when that was gonna punch.
I'm not in the fate anymore, leave me alone. I'm sorry, 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 I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
You silly thing.
Yeah, I know, I'm very silly.
I'm getting annoyed.
Definitely not have tried to do that. I thought I was doing well as well.
I wasn't even in that. Sod off.
Yeah, they've already qualified.
Yeah, ages ago. Finally done one of them, Jesus.
Oh, you probably... Okay. But I was
Told you I was
really
doing
bad.
rubbish. No, I'm doing like absolute shite.
Oh my. I've still got the blue one to go.
I did the fate! Woo!
I just did the blue one. Managed to get it
Fire-coloured
quick.
gemstones.
I gotta do a red one. I'm bad at the red.
Very nice, thank you.
I'm gonna
Lovely.
qualify.
Woo, Kyla!
I'm gonna wait for you to see if you can do it, but if it gets down to 5 seconds, I'm gonna go through.
You got this,
Bloody
Paris.
rubbish at the punching ones. It confuses me.
I believe.
Can't even see you. Right.
Oh, fuck off. Go through. I'm not gonna get it. It's just like, it's really hard to gauge where you're actually gonna get hit. Even if it looks like you're not in line of getting hit, you still get hit, and it's like, what the hell?
I know.
We're riding, riding,
It's the road,
riding on a river. Riding, riding, riding on a river. Yeah. Riding on the river. Riding on the river. Oh! I fell down. Wasn't paying attention.
Game?
Getting XP from discovering all the locations,
do
because
this.
why not? Might as well run around and grab the locations, seeing as I can't do anything else. They're cute. Called rabbit's tails.
I was not in that. Jerks.
Oh, look, they're little. I don't know what they are. Things. Like goannas and sort of thing. Oh, they're little flying.
Hell yeah. They got stunned a lot back there.
Oh, that's it. That's this area. Oh, look, it's so cute. This is like where they live. Oh, isn't it cute? Oh, look, there's more to it. Oh, look, this is like... Oh, look, this is like a home. Oh, how beautiful. It's the Potter homes. New Mal Potters. I'm sure I'll come see you guys soon. They said you have a part to
2,000 to go.
unlock for that thing as well, so I'm sure I'll see you guys soon. Bye! I'll see you soon.
I'm just gonna get the last bit of the armor while I... Oh wait, I still got one. No. I still got one bit of the... Nope, I thought I had... I'm still gonna grab a piece of the armor before I... continue.
Hello, flying dragon
That
thing.
way I can't forget.
What, Avis? Avis is like a delivery company here in Australia, for those of you who don't know. You can like
Just let
rent
me
a
know
truck
if you
from them.
need more time or anything.
And then you can like... Well, I mean, they're not a delivery place, really. They're more like you rent a truck and then you can move your house. Well, I think they may offer like the delivery services too. I don't actually know. Maybe. Oh look, these look like... Hello. Warriors.
I can buy the shoes.
You're going to sleep, Timmy. No worries. Timmy's going to sleep.
Good night, Tim Bob.
He's old and he has a job. Those things are big. They look like Santa Claus. Santa Claus mixed with like, I don't even know, something.
Hey, I got my shoes.
Congrats. I've just got one more of the crowns to get. And then that's all the
Are you getting all three of them?
He's like, great.
Yeah, there's
well,
three. There's the matte crown, the shiny crown, and the knit hat.
Yeah, I've got the hat already, but I want to use them for different things, and I want to have the hat crowns as 2 different colors.
That's fair.
One for healing, one for DPS, 2 different colors.
If I...
And then the hoodie, the hood, for my crafting and gathering.
If I jumped into this water, would I live?
But yes.
Is this the same person we had last time?
Oh, I almost did not live. Holy mo...
Okay, unless you're me, and or are in combat, you can't die from 4 damage.
I was like...
I didn't even notice that this person that we're playing with is wearing the Fall Guys outfit. Because it's so tiny. It's so cute. And I think they've recolored it.
Yeah, it's a red. It's not
I clicked that law because that was funny. Will I die? No.
What's funny?
Almost dies. I think I had like 1 HP after I jumped down.
mean, I seriously, Uriel was scratching his head, but when I showed him the screenshot of me dying from full damage.
I mean, if anyone was going to, it would be you. Or me. Well, you, but maybe me.
Oh wow, I got through that pretty quick. So did you.
I've almost discovered this entire area. I'm having a nice swim.
You can do it.
Why can't I discover up there? What's over there? I go over there. Is there a way to get up? Is it like in the sky or something?
Go through.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go through. I'm fine.
Thanks.
Is it like underwater?
Well, your stream might as well have something to watch, right?
I just been following you.
Hi, gaming. You have so many points. How many points do you
play
have?
Final Fantasy 14?
How do I go underwater again? Can I go underwater?
I can't remember.
Maybe I can't go underwater here. I don't think I can go underwater here. I thought maybe that area was underwater, but maybe it's not. Okay,
what?
10.5k. That's a lot of points. Paris, how many points do you have on my channel?
Don't know.
That's rude. Imagine not knowing.
I somehow have 11.4.
11.4.
Given I spend 3 or 4k per stream.
Also, Hello Gaming. Oh no, Gaming's like, I have so many points. Oh, hi, by the way. It's okay, I forget to say hi to people too. I want to know what's in that area on the map. And how you get that. Or the temple. Maybe you can't go there until you've like unlocked it or something. Oh, there does look like there's like a ledgy thing there though. Maybe I'll go here. One day Paris will tell us how many points she has. It's just not right now. She's playing Fall Guys in Final Fantasy. Oh, this is the location, is it? Oh, yeah. Such a good location. Love it. It's a wall.
Jeez, that person's way too good at that.
I'll try and get the other one as well.
Points regarding what?
On my channel.
Is it exclamation mark points, I think, so I can get the exact number or not?
No, like on Twitch.
No, I know, that's what I'm asking.
Oh, no.
If you hover over it, it'll tell you.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, so I have to bring it up on the computer, okay.
Why can't I go in here to this place? Lame. I don't know what that empty spot is, and it's making me really upset that it's there. You can't unlock it. But I want to. Legit the only spot on the map I need to unlock. Can I go this way? I'm in. Ooh! Okay, I can never find 136. Sorry?
What?
Why do you have so many points?
Because I'm here for every stream.
Do you not use them?
I mean, I used them earlier, you see I used them. And I have watch streaks and stuff, you get 450 extra.
Oh, my duty popped finally! It's 20 minutes of running around. Oh, I don't think the boot one works. I keep meaning to turn it off.
We'll turn it off then.
Oh.
Jesus.
Did you win?
I booped myself.
No.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Oh.
Oh my goodness, it's so pretty! Wow!
Oh, you already popped. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
it took 20 minutes, but that's okay. I ran around and like capped like the entire map, except for one section of the map that you cannot cap for some reason.
What's cookie design outfit? What does that mean?
What?
Your thing, it says change outfit, black, blue, cookie design, or
Oh,
purple.
cookie design's the one you made.
That doesn't help me.
The one that you made, like you made.
For what?
The one with the cookies on it.
The jumper.
Yeah.
Okay, I was so confused.
This one.
I was so lost.
Maybe if it wants to load. Has it gone? Hello? Oh, there it is.
You disappeared at it.
Took a hot minute to load.
Oh, okay, I see. Does that one have a hat as well?
It does. They all have hats. You know how much coding it took for me to get them all to have hats, but they all have hats. This is Law's fate.
Why is Monster Time out of stock?
Because Law did it.
Okay, that's fine then. I was gonna say, I'm like, excuse me.
This is Law's least favourite hat out of all my hats.
It's green.
Yeah.
But it's a dragon.
Yeah, but it's green.
And I worked so hard on him.
No, but you should have made it purple.
But I wanted it to be green.
To be fair, yeah, it's to match my IRL one that I have.
You know, my fault.
So yeah, it's still my least favorite just because
Just because it's green.
it's green.
Yeah.
I don't like green either, it's okay, but I think it's cute.
It is
and
cute.
his wings are really cool.
I have a special outfit coming for Christmas.
Yeah.
Lauren and Palace have seen it.
Has Law seen the hat?
Yep.
Yeah, you saw the hat, didn't you? Yeah.
I was in.
Yeah, you were literally in call with
us.
us.
Yeah. I don't know if you had put it on like in full and everything. I wasn't sure.
Sorry.
No, I like those wings. I worked damn hard on it.
Just made them a different colour and then we'll be happy.
You wanted a green dragon, so I made a green dragon. I do as I'm told.
You do.
I am pretty happy with the wings, though, to be fair, because I wasn't sure what to do. So I am happy with the outcome.
Yeah, and then now you know how to do that other one that you made for the Christmas one as well. You would not have known how to do.
Yep.
Oh my god, our tank's gonna die.
Brilliant as well, hey?
Why is our tank gonna die? What's happening? Oh, well, never mind, it's alright. We killed the monsters, but...
Oh, bloody hell. Can they give this bloody map a rest?
No. They know you're wanting to play it.
Honestly. Trying to make me rage quit.
How are you, by the way, Gaming?
Hoodie. I'm still happy with that hoodie.
It is a good hoodie.
Proper chuffed with it. Took me ages.
Full body full body.
All 4 of us are playing. Cool.
Oh goodness. Oops, I got caught in a AoE. My bad. Oh my goodness, I couldn't even get out of it. Let me out of it! Oh my god. What is happening? I'm getting out of one and then another one's coming up. Oh, good ass up. Did AoE heals. We love that. Thank you, Spoo. Oh, stack, 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 stack.
No, I didn't get hit just then. Are you okay?
Me? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I thought it was talking to me.
Doof.
I'm
Both.
chilling. Why? Because I was yelling stack, 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 stack. And Lord knows why I'm yelling stack. It's okay. Even though I'm kind of just yelling it to myself because obviously I'm not.
Is your healer a decent healer?
Seems to be, yeah. At one point I thought they weren't, but now I think the tank was just being a bit silly. They're doing AoE heals and everything. Oh my god, I'm getting
straight through the truck.
Flashed about. Oh my goodness, this is actually the most annoying floor mechanics.
Are you sure? I'll be fine.
I think she wants to see my dungeon.
Sort of critique the healer.
Oh, I see you put the full body. It's Volk fault.
Yeah, I can't change it back anyway because I.
No, I am proper happy with that. It was
stack, 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 stack.
It really was.
Oh my god, most of the team didn't stack, but that's fine.
Once you're out of the dungeon,
yeah,
are you able to kind of try and show it off a little bit? Because the actual like white bits on it are the cream of a melting moment as well. So it's really detailed, even though it doesn't look it. I feel like I'm getting a lot better at making stuff like that, and it's made me really like glad. Because I was like really unsure about a lot of the stuff I was doing for a while there.
Oh, pretty pink. Whoops. Why is the tank not pulling them? I know I accidentally apparently hit them before he pulled them, but like then he didn't pull them after the fact. Why?
Oh, I've fallen. Dickhead. That's an easy map to get through and I've fallen.
Oh.
I'm so sad. No, I'm very upset, but that's fine.
Get me out of the AoE.
I think I got a bit of a lag spike, to be fair.
Because you have my stream up.
I don't know why. Yeah, I think my Giggle is still up.
I'll let you know I'm out if you want to close it and then just pull it up. Because I might be here for a while.
Okay.
We've still got like, I don't know, 4 more things to do, so. Which include bosses and all. Oh, we're moving again, okay.
No, it's actually funny. Like, I'm looking at the flat overlay for that jumper, and there's actually so much detail in it that you just can't see.
Yeah.
Like even the tags on it too. I'm happy with it though. I think I've done a good job.
I also think that.
The heal is decent-ish. Never mind. Heal, I'm doing the AoE heal. Still haven't.
Yeah, they were doing them before, so I don't know what's happened. Oh, there's that after the fight. Okay. Okay. No worries.
About that.
Chill.
Stay away
Gotta
from
make up my mind on what colours I want to dye these like clothes. Because I thought I was like set on it, but I also am really liking the gold, so now I don't know.
I have to destroy these things, but
Oh great, that person again.
The little one.
So we play this a lot.
maybe they're trying to do the same thing as you and get like everything.
Maybe. It's got all the pieces. Everyone. Oh, now we have 4 people.
Smack. Smack. Smacking all the DPS-ness. Oh my goodness, this thing is taking forever to die. Oh, am I meant to stand in front of that? Oh. Okay, I see the mechanic. I understand now. Stand in front of the line.
Oh, different map, yes! I love this map.
Damage on everybody.
I actually know how to do this one.
Oh no. Oh, we got it. Okay, good. Oh, they're pretty. Cast my lot. Okay. Pass. Say need for that. Why not? Oh, and it gets to do the last one. Oh my goodness, this is one of the longest dungeons we've done. I was not
How did they get through without blowing up?
Magic.
I don't know, but I hate this.
Oof, fell.
Up the crystal stairs, up the crystal stairs. Da, 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 up the crystal stairs. Oh, we're moving.
No, I fell again.
Oh, we're AoE healing when the tank is moving.
That hits me. Wait, did you just say they just used AoE while the tank is moving?
I mean, they may have cast it before the tank moved, but I don't believe the tank was in the AoE.
Of course not.
I was in it, so I got the heals. I got all them heals. Oh my god, it's like an ice monster, like from Elsa. Oh my lordy, I'm gonna die.
Yeah. I'm still getting 43.
Law's just really interested in watching the dungeon go down.
Okay. fine. Go through.
Oh my god, these guys are big ice dudes like in Frozen. Whoops, that was a heal.
I'm okay. I'm still chunking at it.
I'll try and get further this time. I just got to lock in.
You got this, Paris. I believe in you.
Well, it's the one where you just got to try not to fall off. I'm normally pretty good at it.
Yeah, just don't go too fast and you'll be right. Think about it. Move with purpose. Alright, let's go. Up the crystal stairs. That look like they'd be ice. I mean, they might be ice stairs, but they're not slippery. Cutscene! Oh! Hello, sir!
I've fucking fallen. I'm fucking like lagging out every time I try to jump and it just yeets
What
me
love
and I'm
you,
like,
dude.
okay.
You already look
I don't
so
know why
cool.
it's doing it. I don't think I've got anything else open. I do have dropped frames, so clearly something's going on.
Did you succeed?
No, I didn't, because it glitched again, but as I tried to jump.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm a little dude!
Jump. Happens a lot, I don't know
I'm
why.
a little dude! I'm frog!
Use a
You
frog.
go ribbit?
Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. Oh! Holy, did we all just get... What's happening? Oh!
Cookie, you're not supposed to copy me at things.
Am I meant to go across here? Like, what is happening? Am I meant to do something? I'm scared now. I don't want to go across there anymore.
You've got to go through the metal thing.
Okay, I've got this.
I like Fall Guys.
Oh, Jesus! Doing so well. Oh, the floor's back. It's okay. I don't have to worry about it. The floor's back.
You can stay on the other side.
Oh, now why is it right? Why did he look like that? He looked like a nice frogman earlier. The heck is that? He looked like a sea monster. So I don't want the map up. I don't know why I'm doing that. Why is he puking on everybody? Run away out of the AoE. Oh! Are you a music toad? You're talking about crescendo. That's a music thing. Whoops.
Oh,
Oh,
we started. Okay.
I'm a dude again.
I thought I'd been kicked out or something.
I'm a frog. Thank you for Woe's powers. I'm a frog. Ribbit, ribbit. Ribbit, ribbit.
You seem to be a cat right now, though.
Now I am, yeah. I was a ribbit, ribbit, froggy. It's so close. Ooh! Thank the Lord! Lord have mercy on my soul! That's gotta be one of the worst dungeons I've done so far. Whew!
Yes, though.
So many floor mechanics, dude.
Oh, boshed off.
Oh! Thancred and friends! Woo! Oh, they showered me with flower petals. That's so nice. A bonus reward of 1,212,000 experience points has been awarded for first time completion of this duty. So I got 2,424,000 experience points.
Yeah, the other person's not doing it. Shit, I've fallen again.
No, they are. I thought I just saw them. But that might have been one of those triangle things.
Maybe, or they could just be quite slow. I wasn't sure if they were actually doing it. Let's go.
Spooky water monster. Are they all silly little beans in this world?
I hate this map.
Jolly good show.
Oh, you do not hold back.
This is fair game, by the way. You're absolutely more than welcome to finish if you're going to, because I'm rubbish at this.
We have satisfied thy demands. Will thou now satisfy
Oh, don't worry,
ours?
I've already failed.
Same.
Of course. Of course. There it is. The relic you seek. Yours for the taking. Have care you do not break it, though, yes.
You get blue first.
Yeah, finally got through. Got boshed around heaps.
Ah, but you, my friend, you are mighty indeed, and pleasing.
Oh my gosh, am I gonna get kidnapped by a frog? I feel like I am. He's staring at me weird.
More! I want to see more of her!
Yes! Yes! I could watch her forever!
They're gonna kidnap me, aren't they?
Why don't we just make her one of us?
Oh my god, they're gonna turn me into a frog? Bro,
Yes!
Nice, you did that so quick.
don't turn me into a frog,
Yeah,
please.
well, I only really found red one once.
One of us. One of us. One
I'll be back in
of
just a
us.
second.
What a fine idea! Why ever didn't I think of that? You may have the crown, but in exchange, we will
Oh my gosh. No, you can't go back on your deal. The deal was that I beat the boss and I get the crown. You can't now say you can have the crown if we can take you. That's false advertising. Oh my god. They are kidnapping me. I knew it. I knew from the way that frog was looking at me. Bro, we're on an adventure in Shadowbringers. Far out. First fairies try to kidnap us. Now frogs.
Because you're too adorable.
Apparently, my goodness. Who's that? Oh, it's the dude again. It's the ghost.
Thank the gods.
Well, I don't know whether he's a ghost or not, but...
Underwater, but it's lucky you can.
It was out of that.
I'm sure you had your reasons. But the first rule of dealing with the Fwath is do not deal with the Fwath. It's said that they are born from the souls of the drowned. Were it not for your little trick, you'd have joined them. Your friends are safely back on dry land.
1900 to go.
Wondering. They'll be searching for you, I expect.
Thanks, Ardbert. You weird ghost dude. Bit of an odd bean, that one.
That's the royal capital of the Kingdom of Verbert down there. It's seen better days. They were a stubborn lot, the Verbertites. Set in their ways. But once you got to know them, you couldn't find a more welcoming people. It always froze over in winter, being up in the mountains. So we'd pull up our chairs round the fire and trade tales over steaming bowls of lamb stew, while the street lamps burned hot and bright outside.
Please tell me we get rid of this lake when we kill the big Lightbringer burner person.
Them and anyone else who might remember.
So people can have their lives back.
Everything we gave. What was it for?
Oh, Ardbert. He's so sad.
I wonder. I hope you'll have a better answer than this when all's said and done.
I don't know how long it's been since you watched the very first one, the Realm Reborn one.
A long time.
The Warrior of Darkness is actually the one that gets transported in the opening scene.
I'll see.
Svaki's going to win this one.
The manifesting.
I'm so glad we didn't get kidnapped and turned into a frog.
Oh, you'd be an adorable one, though.
I know, but I don't want to be a frog. Stand on this house for a second while I... So, if I go to VTuber, and then I go this one. Look, guys, Powers put I am
laughing
the
at me.
spark in ZiCookiie on the shoulder. It's very cute.
I think it's on the side too. On one of the sides.
I might not be able to see it because of my arms.
Probably under your arm.
Yeah. There's these cute little strings. And like a it's like an ice cream pocket. That's what I think when I see it. It looks like an ice cream.
I actually think it came out really good. Even the hood looks really cute.
Oops. Totally spun my person around. If I were cute.
No, I'm happy with that one, honestly. Like, I've made other ones before and they're pretty cute, but that one's like top tier.
We go back to normal.
They're being turned into a frog.
Yeah, for real. I'm a frog. A bit. Oyande! Alice! Bendos!
I'm gonna get you to 10k likes before you end this.
Okay.
I'm determined.
I believe you.
Truth be told, you're really not that far off.
Oh. There was nothing where we looked. Oh no.
But it's only the two of us. You did not see that.
I explained what happened. Dear gods, were it not for Soroban's blessing,
Malfunctioned.
but I need not labour the point. I'm glad to see you safe and well, my friend. Have you any idea how worried we were? To wash up on the shore, only to find you weren't with us? Oh, but I'm forgetting. Here's your crown, your majesty. The Fwa kept that part of the bargain, at least. While there were certain twists and turns, our work here is done, with everyone none the worse for wetness. Oh, thank goodness you're still here! Hello, Fairy. Saloon, is something amiss?
Oh, wow.
A great big mob of mortals is marching to Ilmain.
Typical.
Mortals with ugly weapons and
such a
uglier
good, like,
faces.
attempt.
They wouldn't happen to be your friends, would they? Rather the reverse, I fear. The Olmorian guard army, I guess. Meaning, we can play with them? As much as you like. But just to be sure, I will return with you to confirm their identities. If they are who we suspect, we will require your aid. If Alphano is coming, then Alice will be too, yes? Can't have one without the other, you know. Alright. Just remember, we're not your playmates this time. I'm afraid we must leave the rest of the relic hunt in your hands.
Did you get through?
My options tab.
Almost.
My options.
I'm at the top. Where are you?
Still doing the spinny thing.
Alpha No pretty much said that
I thought you got through already.
I will have to fight the Light Warden on my own. And my options to answer are, don't worry, I've done this sort of thing before. Or, it's fine, defeating the Light Warden would have always fallen to me.
Nah, go through.
Main characters are so sassy.
I love that we both just get to a point where we're like, it's not gonna happen.
Perhaps, but I would feel better if I were there to assist you.
And by the way, I've actually cut my thing down by
Back to
half.
cheering you on from afar. See you afterwards,
That's
my friend.
awesome.
I started with needing 3,000.
By the way, my friendos are playing
3,380.
Fall Guys
I now
on Final
need
Fantasy.
1,654.
Oh wow. That's not much.
With our enemies fast approaching, time is of the essence.
I
We
know.
must needs accomplish our mission with all possible haste.
Honestly.
Of the two remaining bearers of the relics, the Numor and the Nira, we shall seek them out next.
not
Among
like,
the Fae
Miller
folk,
Stream
they
can
bear
see
the
you see me
distinct
do it.
of having bidded
see you
in
do
this
it.
land since before the flood. They are also the friendliest to men and have served me faithfully whensoever I have called upon them. Indeed, they are the source of much of the knowledge I have acquired in my time
you
here.
suck.
Path leadeth past my
bold.
dwellings. Let us away.
Do it.
Let's go. We're just gonna use our mount to get around so that we're not using too much of our money. Money,
This side
money,
one's so
money.
unpredictable. It's
It's
so
so
confusing.
funny. In a rich man's world. I'm going to see the new Mo. Whee!
fuck off. It's just bullying me at this point.
Orange! Past yonder cliff lieth the Plaini,
You can do it.
home of the Numo.
I don't think I can.
The others have gone ahead to scout the way. Come,
run out of
let us
time.
follow.
You'll never do it if you don't believe.
Facts. Never give in. Even if the universe is telling you to. Tell it to shut up.
I've got a minute to do the other two. Alright, let's see. What have I got?
Let's go,
Oh, I hate this one.
Sparky. Let's go.
I've...
I'm like your cheer
Really?
squad.
Really?
Yes, really. Whee!
Oh my fucking god. I actually think it's bullying me.
Alright, more cutscene time! Woo! We love how many cutscenes are in an MSQ, guys! Is this a talking one? I feel like it's gonna be a talking one. No. If the path striketh thee as precipitous,
Was I not well beyond
tis
that?
because it was once a mountain
You were.
trail. For where the
Apparently my hitbox
lake
is
now
just
lieth,
really
there was a
messed up.
valley, in whose midst thrived the city of Obert. 'Twas only when the Fwaf came in the wake of the flood that the settlement was drowned. We stand now upon its former outskirts, grazing lands where shepherds once tended their flocks.
That's insane.
Though one cannot help but feel a pang of loss when faced with such a spectacle,
I should go back and
one
clip it
can
and send it to them and be
scarcely
like,
blame the fey folk that are altering the land.
This cap.
The blame for that lieth rightly with the light, a force terrible enough to bring an entire civilization to its knees,
We
an
get a lot of
entire
the other
world
currency
that
too,
it should have been
hectic.
allowed to rise up unchecked is the greater regret. Yet in spite of all the tragedy which surroundeth me, full glad I am for the chance to be
buying
here.
more things. I can buy something else.
'Twas these hands which brought together the warriors of darkness and Memphilia, lest thou forget. Therefore, even when there no eighth umbral calamity to forestall,
Get the
it
glossy
seemeth
one, 'cause I
only
know
right
I
that
want
I
that
strive to
100%.
deliver the first from its doom. Only right, I say. Though such words I'll convey the strength of my resolve. In truth, I can no more
just trying
ignore the
to
plight of this world
grab all the
than I can
pieces
choose
in
to
here
stop
now.
breathing, and thus do I
The three
labour
hats,
for those
the
we have lost,
thing,
for those we
the-
can
there's no
yet
gloves, is there?
save.
No.
The coming
Gloves.
struggle
I've got the
promiseth
pants, I've got the shoes.
to
They're all
test
there
us to our limits, but so long as we stand together, I doubt not but that we shall
I'll quickly
prevail.
recalculate mine actually.
Ah, mortals, just as we thought. Pixies. Has thou business with us? Business? Ha! Nothing so boring. We smelled you coming, and thought we'd come to play. They do not appear to be pixies of a lighter round.
So I need 980 for
Mine
the main
apologies, but
stuff
we
that
are
I
in some
want.
haste.
That's
May
alright.
happen another day.
Well, I don't
Oh,
need 980
in some
because I have
haste
a
are
bit
you?
still,
Then
so
allow
I
me
need
to
a bit less than
hasten
that.
you on your way.
Don't possess this
Me.
nonsense? I know I do. That? I don't know what it's saying. I
Teleportation magic. For a mercy, we were not sent far from our course. Should the pixies find us again, however,
we'll deal with
they
it
will most
later.
assuredly repeat the trick. We have not the time to waste. Let us avail ourselves of an enchantment I have learned.
They won't.
Fey cloak it is called, a most ingenious magic which rendereth one invisible to fey folk, albeit briefly. Those pixies are mean.
You can queue up.
Mean. I shall cast the enchantment upon thee. Under its gaze, thou art to make thy way past the pixies and rejoin our comrades. Know, however, that the enchantment shall suffice to veil thee, and thee alone. Be not tempted to employ a mount, as it will only serve to give thy presence away. Okay, I've got the fake cloak. Alright, let's go. Where am I going? Where is said destination? Oh, there. Okay. Not too far, at least. Bye-bye, pixies. I ain't got nothing on me. Nuh-uh. What should we do when we find them? We send them flying. Tee. Any moment now. I'm scared that sprinting might make the effect go away too. Okay, it doesn't. Okay, good. Hee, the pixies are disappointed. How unfortunate. Poor pixies. Poor pixies. Hi, Thancred and Minthelia. How are you, besties? I should be right behind us. What took you so long? Well, these pixies, like, teleported us, blah, blah, blah. I see, yes. I'd say that's a valid excuse for lateness. You are hereby forgiven. In other good news, the Numo village lies just through here. We'll enter it as soon as Oriange decides to join us. It's so pretty! Reindeers! Nemo! Oh, they're so cute! Oh my goodness! Models! Models are here! Lots of them!
Oh, we're doing your least favorite.
Yep.
Thought you said the Numo were man's best friends. The poor thing was beside herself with fear. Was beside herself, perhaps, but not with fear. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable, I tell you, to have so many mortals appear at once. It's more excitement than we can bear! Greetings, Elder Wide-Ank. Tiny. It hath been a while. Pray forgive my brevity, but time is against us. I come to borrow the stone scepter of the Numo. The stone scepter? Then you mean to lift the seal over Ligay? That is unacceptable! Unacceptable, I tell you. If the king is set free, none here will be safe. Unlike our Fey cousins, we Numo have called this land our home since time immemorable. Leaving is unthinkable. Thus did full many of us lay down our lives to seal away our king when they were corrupted by light. If we do as you ask, our sacrifice would have been in vain. Just hand over the goddamn stuff!
If you get to the top, go through.
Easily said for one who hasn't
You're in
experienced
front
the
of me, by
king's
the way.
wrath.
Am I?
Honoured elder, pray believe me when I say that this
anything
woman is
again.
possessed not only of the strength
I got
required
really
to vanish the
lucky,
king,
'cause it
but of
looked
something
like I
still
got
more
a hit,
valuable,
but it
a
didn't
means to
count for
resist
some
the result.
reason.
Corruption. Indeed, she hath
got
already laid
through,
low
I
the
still
light
got
one
hit.
of Lakeland, all without
That's
succumbing
hectic.
to the influence of its light. She is yet a stranger to this land, 'tis true, but she harboureth the self-same desire to see the Sinitas eliminated as we do. Wilt thou not
Just
lend
go
us
through
thy
it.
hand, that we
Sure.
might see thy beloved home restored to its former
Yeah,
glory?
like I don't want this torture.
You have always done right by us, Iriange. You have placed your faith in this woman, so then shall
Be
we?
told, I'm actually okay
As you
on
say, we
points.
want nothing more than to be
I'll
rid
have
of the
to do
Sin
some probably
Eaters.
tomorrow, but
Be that as
yeah.
it may, this is not a decision to be made lightly. We require time to deliberate. A turn of the moon, perhaps.
It's not.
We don't have a
option
turn of the moon.
anyhow.
Unless we want to
But
debate this with the
1500, yeah,
Ulmoran
not bad.
army. Elder, given all that is at stake, I cannot well accept thee simply to roll over and acquiesce to our request. But even now a powerful foe draweth near, and I fear I must beseech thee to hasten thy deliberations, that thou mightest fetch us this scepter, while there is yet time to use it. Roll over, fetch, You know full well that naught gives us greater pleasure than to render aid to men. You know full well, yet you speak the words of power regardless. It is unfair, unfair, I tell you. In happier times, it is our honour to assist mortals in need, and receive rewards benefited our deeds. Since the kingdom of Vobord fell, however, we've been starved of man's patronage. After so many years of deprivation, it is difficult to ignore such an earnest entreaty. Very well, Iriange. I promise to give you as swift an answer as I may. In return, I ask that you and yours remain here the while, and bestow upon us your patronage. Is this arrangement agreeable? Yeah, alright, might as well. You sniffed at me. You offer your patronage to our people too, yes? Let's see. Perhaps you can begin with Marnos. They are one of our foremost artisans, once held in the highest esteem by the Knights of Vobur. With the Knights gone, however, Marnos has had no opportunity to put their skills to use. They would be overjoyed by their patronage. Oh, is this where I've got to, like, buy things? I don't want to buy this. I mean, I might want to buy this stuff. It might be my stuff. We'll see.
Hardest part.
I already got the Aether out here because I was like, I want all the Aether.
You get a decent amount of points for getting all the way through here.
Hello, Mom.
261.
Okay.
Did I already count that leaf? Oh, they're counting leaves. Oh! They're so excited.
It's half of a couple of other things, and then it's nearly the whole of two others, and then it is the whole of a
I've got to slay things for their legs.
True, yeah.
Rough. Alright.
And then it's almost 1/3 of the dice.
Ooh, pretty loud.
It is. It's just a little bit more than 1/3 for the
no,
dice.
it's okay. Oh. I need to kill the frogs for their legs. I'ma kill the frogs for their legs. Not frogs, fungi, but close enough.
Kill your own kind. Cookie?
No, it's okay. It's a fungus, not a frog. I read it wrong. Thought it said moss frogs. It says moss fungi. Terrible at reading. Give me your leg. How about you? I mean, they kind of still look like frogs, to be fair. I'm gonna take them to the old lady person, and they're gonna make me stuff. I'm giving them my patronage. I never know if I'm saying that word right, because it doesn't sound right. Patronage.
Sorry, I'm working on things as I'm AFK.
AFKing's the best way to work on things. I don't have to do nothing. Hello, Yange. Irony. Hello, friendo. Yes. have the legs. I'm just gonna skip this cutscene. CBF reading all the stuff. I have a shop. Do I have anything good in it? Oh, it's not. Oh, it's not even a shop. It's just repairing my stuff. I mean, that's okay, I guess. My stuff does need repairing. Heyo, yeah. There's a joyous day indeed. Remove the noxious mushroom. Holy crap.
Taste the rainbow. 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 Taste the rainbow.
It's still going. Taste the rainbow. 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 Oh my goodness. I was thank you so much for the raid. I hope you had a nice stream. Did you enjoy your Fall Guys Final Fantasy? I love the frosty tools, by the way. Me see her play Final Fantasy 14 online. She funny and chill. She learns stuff and explore. But no can play with controller. Me think she still do great. She safe space for all. Me like her music too. Me want cookie. You did. That's good. I'm glad to hear it. Oh, I'm getting tired too. I should totally also finish up soon. But I'm addicted to this. I'm so addicted to this storyline though.
Understandable.
Yes,
I'm not going to bed yet, to be fair. I just want to wind down a bit.
That's fair. How do I destroy it? Remove the flame spores. Oh, is it not? Am I looking at them? What am I looking at? Hello? I don't know what I'm looking at. Is it this? No. I'm going to do some parkour. I'm so confused. It's up here. Whee. No. Are you a flame spore? No. Right out here. Perfect. Gimme. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Gimme, gimme, gimme. All the way up there. Oh my goodness. This is some parkour in this. Up the tree. Up the mushrooms. Gimme.
It's timing. There's a gate apparently.
Ooh.
Congrats.
Harris likes the gates.
Oh, I've got to leave the party. I'll do that.
Okay.
Air Force. How was this one? This is gonna be interesting.
That one's fun.
What is it?
It's oh, how do I explain what this is?
Gotta shoot things.
Yeah, it's a shoot one.
Oh yeah. I am so quick. Oh, there's more of them? Okay. No worries. You could have told me that beforehand, but that's cool. No worries. I don't mind doing more work, I guess. Why do they only tell you after you've already done the other thing? Like, why don't you just tell you it all at once? Final Fantasy really needs to learn to, like, give you the entire quest in one go. Rather than... telling you to get 3 of
Poor
these.
guy's outfit is free. Is done.
Yeah. Yay. That's actually exceptional, to be honest, because I could not do that many games for Fall Guys. Wait, is there more? Oh, my goodness. Oh, my phone's vibrating, but like nothing's actually popping up on it. I'm so very confused. Minfilia! Bye! I love you. You weren't spying on me or anything? I don't know, you look like you're spying on me. Boo-boo. You wanna come hang out over there? I don't mind. I mean, what? I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, Giff. I got all your flame spores.
I only lost 20 points, that's not bad.
It's not bad at all. I deal with all of the flame spores.
I thought like one person would have to win. I mustn't have won.
Ooh, we've got a ring coffer. Ooh. What's your shop? Oh, you have real stuff. Ooh. Nothing I want though. Typical.
Oh, I can go do the Chocobo thingy now, can't I?
Chocobo. Yes.
I'm still tempted to call it a Chocobo. It's funnier.
You mean Chocobo, or whatever it is that you call it. You called it right that time.
Chocobo.
You just called it right. You weren't calling it right before.
Chocobos.
There you go. Chocobo.
Chocobo?
Yeah. Chocobo. It's like chalk. Oboe.
You're an oboe.
That's a mint instrument.
Yeah. An instrument. Minty instrument.
What? Is she over there? Telling me to go talk to Minfilia and she's all the way on the other side of the map. Why? Ma'am, what are you doing? First you're spying on people, and now you've ran away to the other end of the map. Make it make sense. Are you gonna get me caught by the Yulmore people? Because you just hate me that much? The love-hate relationship. I love her and she hates me. And she got caught purposely by the Yulmore people twice already, so... maybe. How far she's making me go? All the way over there. 50... 60 yards. What, how is it getting further away when I'm getting closer? I'm so confused. Oh, now it's going down. Nope, now it's going up again. I'm so confused. Maybe because I've got to go down to go up. So it's technically longer. Where are you? And I'm so sorry that I scared you away by talking to you because you were watching me like a creeper. But where are you? Can you just come talk to me like a normal adult human? There you are. Amelia, what on earth are you doing? Through here, I peered inside, and sure enough, it was milling with Numo. They looked none too friendly. If Thancred were here, he'd tell me to go about it quietly and quickly. Let us split up. What are we doing here? Find all the ink I can and come back outside. See you shortly, ZiCookiie. Where the fuck are you going? Why? Hello?
Am I meant to do something with my, like, Chocobo registration thing? I'm so confused.
I have no idea. I've never done the Chocobo racing.
I don't know. I've never done it either.
You've got the two least knowledgeable people about this topic. You'll have to, like, Google or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
What am I doing? Where am I going? Wait. There's one. Me. I love how I'm just so high level that these people don't even care about me because I can't aggro them because I'm too high level. Whee! Whereas if I was actually the level I'm meant to be, I'd be aggroing them just walking in here.
Yep.
More invisible ink. Oh, up there's the third invisible ink, okay. So, all the way around. Okay. Up we go! Go, horsey! Aethon, let's go! What's your favourite mount that you have, Lo?
My favorite? Oh.
Yeah,
like my little moon I have.
Ooh. That sounds pretty.
It's pretty.
Pretty. Where is she? Hello, Minfilia. Again. I don't know why we went in there to get ink, but alright.
Oh, thank goodness.
It's a talking scene! Let's go!
Those Numo were rather frightening. I'm glad you're safe.
Or maybe you shouldn't have gone over there without Thancred then. Yeah, you don't need to worry about me. I'm chill. Worry about yourself.
No, of course. How silly of me. You're a hero.
I mean, technically you're a hero too,
Minfilias
but...
before me battled Sin Eaters as part of the Yulmoran army. But that had all changed by the time I was found. They held me captive, so that I wouldn't follow in the others' footsteps. I'd still be in my cell now had Thancred not spirited me away. When he found me, I knew nothing of the world. I didn't know how to live, let alone fight. Thancred once told me that if the efforts to summon you failed, it would fall to me to face the Light Wardens. I realized then that it was the only reason he kept me close. As a contingency.
Oh, no!
The truth is, he can't stand to be around me.
No! That's such a lie!
Because I'm not her. I'm not his Minfilia. Once, we journeyed to Nabatha Reng together, to the place where the oracle appeared and stayed the flood. As we drew near, I felt as though I was fading away. I shut my eyes and covered my ears, and then... I'm not sure what happened after that. I have a vague feeling that I said something to him. Only it wasn't me at all. It was her. Afterwards, Thancred didn't say a word. Only kept to himself and brooded. There's nothing I can do for him. Nothing I can offer but my presence, though it only reminds him of his loss. She should be the one to live on. That's why I tried to find you, because I knew that was what she wanted. But now that you're here, I'm not entirely sure what it was she intended me to do. Was I meant to tell you something, or bring you to someone, or somewhere? I can feel the answer at the edge of my mind, just out of reach.
Oh.
What is that?
What is going on?
I find it.
Why? Why did you imprison us?
Oh.
Such boredom, such tedium have we suffered. It is unfair. Unfair.
Titania. Oh my goodness.
Come and play with us.
Oh my god, you're creepy! Holy shit! Okay. No worries.
It came from the castle.
That wasn't at all scary.
This is everything I have. Please see it delivered to the Numo.
Where are you going, Minfilia?
I will bear word to Thancred and the others.
Then aren't we going to the same place? I'm so confused. Why are you going by yourself? She's always so sus. Sassy baka. I don't believe a word she says. We get there and she's not even going to be there. We'll have run away from home or something again. Please forgive us. Forgive you for what? Oh, I was thinking they're talking to Tatlana. Nia. It's Nia can almost Oliver too. Oh, you're welcome. To play and be free, so strong as that desire, it often leaks through the seal to invade our consciousness. Oh. Ooh, got some Aetherite tickets for that quest. Ooh. Spicy, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Elder. Can you give me your thing so I can go on my quest? Come here. Where are you? You're not the elder, are you? I think maybe you are. I don't know. Hello. I've been informed that you've been an excellent... I am an excellent patron. Yes, give me the scepter. You've come to a decision. Give me it. Give me it. Or I'll fight you. I will fight you. I will fight you if I have to. And I don't want to have to fight you. He's not going to give it to us. Oh no, they are going to give it to us. I thought he wasn't going to give it to us. I thought what he was saying was mean and then he wasn't going to give it to us. Thank you for this stone scepter. Oh, be prepared to face the full fury of nature. Hmm. Oh. Every fairy and then uncle tries to steal my sapling from me. This is my sapling, mine, do you hear? Not yours and not the poir's. And anyone who so much as thinks about trying to seduce her will wish they hadn't. We've got a real cute fairy friend. I like her. Okay. Let's go see the Amaro then. And get the shoes. We need the shoes. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Skipping cutscene. Done talking now. Thank you. Let's go.
And still hasn't seen me.
Wait, what? Ah! La! Oh, your moon is so adorable! Does it have a Lalafell on it? That's cute. Yeah, Lalafell.
Kinda. You'll meet them later. And we'll walk.
I am Mr. Lalafell. Alright, let's go! Whee! Off to see the Amaro people. Whee! I'm so glad they gave me some Aetheryte tickets. I never used them, but it's nice to have. I mean, I could
Give
just...
you free travel.
Yeah, I know, but I just don't like... I'm like, oh, maybe I might need them at another time, you know? I'm a hoarder. Could have just teleported this Aetheryte, to be fair, but that's alright. Walking's fine too. Oh, there's an Aether current here. I can't fly! I wish I could fly. I believe I
if you
can
tell me
fly.
where you need to go, I could fly you.
It's a tea. I don't mind walking. Well, not walking, but...
Okay.
Right. Oh, there's the Amaro. Come here, Amaro. I have something to say to you, and I don't know what it is yet, but it is something. Ropers, I mean, a friend to fly you. I mean, I wouldn't be much roping. Law would definitely fly me. What will you say? Mog! Oh, okay, well, that didn't work, did it? Cow! No? Okay, the only other option. Stay who? Yay! I woke them up. Albert? That's our friend. That's the dead friend. I mean, I don't know if he's actually dead, but kind of dead. And he seems dead. He seems like a ghost.
That's the name of the...
He's the one who comes to see me in my dreams and stuff. Or just randomly.
Yep.
Forgive me, I was having a dream. Seldom do men visit us. What brings you to our village? I like you. Can I keep one of those as a mount? You desire the crystal shoes that you may confront the Light Warden. Exactly. That's exactly what I want to do. You mustn't think... Yeah, but I already did, okay? Just give it to me. You indeed immune to the Light's corruption, as you claim. Vanquishing the king will bring you naught but sorrow. What do you mean? Forget this folly. Return whence you came. They have feelings. You can't just mount them. But I want to. They look cool. I want to mount like that. Oh, its name was Sato. That's why I had to yell it. Let us leave him with his thoughts. We need to talk to them. We need the shoes. We're wasting time. Just force him to give them to us. I'm not sure I understand Minophilia. Shh. Just run away like you always do. I love you, but run away. See you later. I think, and there's no surer way than to speak with its members. Okay. Such wise, you'll come to understand Sato's reasons for refusing us, and I hope gain insight into how he may yet be persuaded. Why can't you just tell us the answer? Yourself's known to them. Okay, I'll go talk to them all. It, like, honestly seems like he knows why they don't want to give me the shoes. Yet he's like, go talk to these dragon people and find out yourself. Just to give me the shoes. I want the shoes. Rispa, can you give me the shoes? It's not often that we're visited by men, much less unglamoured ones. Well, excuse me. I'm not bothering to glamour yet, okay? Because, you know, I'm such, like, I'm not at the end yet. What brings you so far from your own kind? Stuff. What? Oh, pet. Oh, I don't know if they're gonna like that. I don't think he's gonna like that. I cannot be helped but be reminded of my master's hand. He was a knight of Verbert. Very good reading. A noble and valiant soul. But like so many others, he died fighting the Sin Eaters, though he is long departed. I remain in this land out of respect for his memory. Oh, that's nice. I'm surprised he didn't bite my hand off for trying to pat him. I'd bite somebody if they tried to pet me without asking. Where do I go now? Here somewhere? Over the rainbow. Hello, friend. I don't know how to pronounce your name, so I'm not going to try. Are you one of those treasure hunters? There's nothing left for you here? No, I'm not. Look. I'm your friend. Let me pet you without asking. That tickles. I never had a master. I'm not accustomed to it. Oh, sorry. Please don't bite me. Not that I dislike your kind, you understand. On the contrary, we Amaro were bred to be fond of men. In the beginning, we were all of us mindless beasts, but then a mage of Ronka gave us the gift of intelligence, that we might better serve our masters. After that empire fell, those with the gift eventually died out. On rare occasions, however, we are born with the seed of our ancestors in us. If we live long enough amongst men, this seed may quicken, restoring the power of speech to us, amongst other things. So it was with me, though I never had a master, as I told you. Oh, very nice. See, like, this is why we shouldn't pet people without asking. Or pet dragons without asking. You know, he didn't have a master. Maybe he doesn't like being petted. Petted. I don't know what the...
Pat.
But if he's being petted. Pet. I don't know.
Pat.
But pat is like you pat them. You can't say, I pat. I don't know, I'm so confused.
It's past tense. You pat the dog. I pat the dog.
I
correct
pet the
word
dog.
to be using. No, if you're currently petting the dog, you can say I pet the dog, but it will still be in proper English.
So it's just all pat?
If it's past tense.
What if it's current tense?
Or like you're saying, do you want to go pat the dog?
What about if you're doing it in that minute?
Sorry?
Or if you're doing it like right now, like I'm patting, or you say I'm patting, not petting.
Petting. I'm petting the dog.
But you just said it's wrong.
No, I'm saying, you saying I pet the dog would be kind of technically not correct. Because you're still saying, like, semi-past tense when trying to say current tense, and that doesn't make sense. But I'm petting would be the current.
Okay. What is all the commotion? Did something happen while we slumbered? Yes. A random person came and pet you. Why am I being patted? It's wonderful. Seldom do we have the chance to enjoy the attentions of men. You're kind of loath to come here for fear of the Fae folk. But then we are Fae folk too. When first we made our home here, we swore on oath to the Fairy King, you see. 'Tis easy to forget sometimes. Oh, now we've got to go back to the big scary boy that didn't want to talk to us nor give us the shoes. Now can they give me the shoes? I want the shoes. I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to Oriang J. I don't know how to say his name. It is our concern for our welfare and not scorn that Ceto seeketh to dissuade us from confronting their king. Yet confront their king we must, and to that end we must needs have the crystal shoes. I hate speaking Oriang J's like speaking. Because it doesn't make sense to me.
Why do you think I don't bother?
What did I unlock? Because I unlocked something. I didn't see what it said. That's all still the same as what I had. What did I unlock? It's something about elementals. Any? Oh yeah, elemental mastery. Grants Ifrit's favor upon executing summon Ifrit. Titan's favor upon executing Topaz Right or Topaz Catastrophe. And Garuda's favor upon executing summon Garuda. Enhances astral flow according to your current elemental favor. Ah, interesting. Very nice. That's just a passive. I don't even have to press that. Nice. Might I prevail upon thee to confer with Ceto in private? The task of slaying the Light Warder would ultimately be thine. It is for thee I believe that he worth most. Okay. I'll go talk to him in private by myself. Go away. Go away, Rian Grey. Nobody wants you around. I'm talking secretly without you. You've spoken with my brethren. And you see it is not out of scorn that I deny you the relic. I simply cannot bear to see men fight and die, not any more, none of us can. To lose one who has placed a gentle hand on us, even once, fills our heart with untold sorrow, as my brothers and sisters will readily attest. I'll win! Don't worry, I've got this! What am I to make of such declarations? Tell me, why do you wish this? This land is no longer man's to fight for, nor will your doing so compel the Fade folk to change. And in order to obtain the other relics, you will already have paid the due price. Naught more is owed. Why then would you risk all to face our fallen king? To save the world! Obviously! Why I do everything I do. What did you say? I want to save the world. The very word. Could it be mere coincidence? Very well. You may believe what you say. We shall see if you have the strength to do it. Yes, C2. We will. We will see. Because I do. Because I'm amazing. Sin Eaters have been prowling the area of late. Prove yourself against them and I will consider giving you the relic. See that you are well prepared, then meet me in the clearing to the east. There I will lure out the fiends, then you may slay them. Fly, my friend, fly! Fly! I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. Every night and day I wanna fly away. 'Cause I totally know all the lyrics to the song. La la la. C2 Rando. I'll use my voice to lure out the Sin Eaters, as I once did when I hunted with an old friend. A feeble cry for the ravenous, a mighty roar for the territorial. I still remember the tricks. But come, we begin at your signal. Okay. Oh! Wasn't quite expecting that much, but alright. Ah! Hello, friendos. Are you prepared to die? You best be. Look, one of you is already gone. You ain't got nothing on me. Yeah, you hit me with your AoE. I don't even care. So you didn't do anything to me. Oh, there's more of you. Okay. Hello, bears. I mean, you're kind of bears. I don't really know what you are, to be honest, but I like a bear.
The bears.
Yeah, they're bears, I think. They look like bears anyway.
The bears who stand on 2 feet for some unknown reason.
Yeah. Alright, you got more for me. Oh, you do? A birdie! Come on, birdie! I'm finished. Oh, was that it? Now he's gonna give me the shoes? All of that?
Wait up.
He's not gonna give me the shoes? He said he would. If he isn't, he's a wanker. And he's a liar. Whee! Hello, Sandman. Bye-bye, Sandman. I went in the wrong way. This way. Hello, C2. I'll see to it that you die if you don't give me the shoes. You said... He needs to think. Of course you don't. Okay. In the heat of the battle, I dropped a prized possession, a medallion. Of all the places that should have fallen, it was a long mirror lake. I'm not fond of water, we certainly cannot dive very deep. Oh, he wants me to dive into the water and find his medallion. Absolute wanker. Excuse me, the literal...
Let's wait to the water?
Sure. Can do. Whee! Oh, that's another person. I'm in the middle next to the Aetherite. Hello!
Pika.
Oops.
Can you get on?
Oh, I might need to be in party. Yes. About to say. There we go. Whee! Alright. We have to go on the other side of the castle. I can't believe he wants me to go in the water for his bloody medallion. God, he's a wanker. He said if I got rid of the Sin Eaters, he'd give it to me. He lied. Why are they all liars? Right. Down here somewhere. Yeah. Oh!
Wait, where? This way?
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere in this circle. Oh yeah, over there. I think. Glittering, it says. How do I? Yeah. Whee! Here.
Was right where it was.
Yeah. You remembered.
No, I just saw a building and went, oh, that's where.
Thank you. Back to him we go. That was so pretty. Oh! There we go. It did. Just took a hot second. It had to think for a second. It's like, oh! Hello, friend. How fared your search? Look, your bloody medallion's here. Now will you give me the damn shoes, please? Please tell me there's a voice scene so we can hear his voice.
Like so.
My medallion! You found it!
Oh, he sounds so funny. I love it.
Oh, I know
Oh,
not
they actually
how
gave
to
you one.
thank you. It is my most treasured possession.
A gift from a dear
departed soul. He was a traveler, and together we journeyed to the ends of the world and back again.
When I was young.
When I was young. In those days, I could not speak, but we found joy in each other's company nonetheless.
Oh, the memories.
Oh, the memories. This medallion he found during an adventure, fashioned it into a necklace for me,
Aww.
his partner in crime. I had not the words to tell him then, but it filled my heart with pride.
Aww.
I was so happy. His name was Artbert, and he was my friend.
It's okay. It's okay, Seitu. He's right there. He can see you. He loves you.
Blamed him for the flood. Him and his comrades. Some few who spoke up for them, of the many whose lives they had touched. But as the years went by, their voices were drowned out by those who only uttered the adventurers' names as a curse. It was too much to bear. And so I left behind men and their lies, and came to this place.
Or C2.
Artbert was a trusting soul, constantly being drawn into the troubles of others. Yet in spite of this, he never thought twice when he saw someone in need. He always tried to help. It was no different then. The world needed heroes. It needed him. And yet, he was a good man. He deserved to be happy. I wish I could have told him that at
He
least.
knows. It's okay, C2. It's okay. He knows. Oh.
You remind me of him. Your kindness.
Oh, goodness. I don't think I'm going to get to the end of Shadowbringers.
When we Amaro were created,
It's too sad.
we were granted the ability to perceive
Get there.
souls. Thus did we recognize our masters.
He's a dragon and I feel
That
bad for
ability
him.
has long since faded from our kind. But due perhaps to my reversion, I can see your soul. Faintly, but surely. It is reminiscent of our striking.
Lorella Well played Raw XD for 50 channel points.
What the sound that dinosaurs make?
We are defined not by the soul we are born with, but the path we walk. Nevertheless, cannot help but
One of
feel
my favorite
that this
clips, honestly.
is more than mere coincidence. Which is why I will place my faith in you. The relic.
Finally, the
It
relic!
is yours.
I only worked my ass to get off all 4 of these. Oh, Barry.
There's trouble! Terrible trouble!
Oh no.
Has something happened at Leader Loran?
Together with the twins, we were playing tricks on some nasty mortals to stop them from setting foot in Ilmeg. At first they ran off screaming, which was lots of fun. But then a scary, bony, wrinkly old mortal came along and spoiled everything. None of our tricks seemed to work on him, which is no fun at all. And now they're getting closer and closer.
Ranjit. If he manages to find his way in, all our efforts will have been for naught.
Well, then let's hurry up. Imagine if these people didn't make us take so long to get the items and just gave them to us.
Our task will be rendered nigh impossible. If we are to prevail, we must needs divide our forces. Thus do I propose the following. Whilst thou salliest forth to meet with the Light Warden, we shall join in the effort to obstruct the trespassers. Should we succeed in staying their advance, all the better. Yet even should we fail, if we can but delay our enemy's arrival long enough for thee to secure victory, our plan may still be deemed a success.
So the moment the lights go out, we all beat a hasty retreat, yes?
Let me come with you. I have the blessing too.
No, Minfilia. You'll only get underfoot. Now come.
Run away, Minfilia. Come with me.
I wish there were more I could do. Please be careful.
Don't listen to Thancred. I'll take you. Dang it. She went with him. Never listens to me. She's just gonna get captured by the army again. Means that you will triumph. I will. Okay. Alright. I'll have to do the dungeon tomorrow, I think. Very
I think
late.
it's a trial, not a dungeon.
Oh.
Think.
That's right, I'll do it tomorrow. It's almost midnight. Should be safe if I log out near the Aether Eye, I think, hey.
It's a trial.
Is a trial?
What? Yeah.
Oh, that's alright, I'll do it tomorrow.
If you need help,
I will do. I was planning streaming tomorrow. If I feel up to it. Alright.
Okay.
Thank you for playing with us. Me. I will go finish my stream. Alright. Even though you both are already in call, I cannot stay unmuted to finish my stream, so. I'm terrible like that. Oh! Don't put me in jail! What did I do? I did the right thing. I'm being good. I'm even going to bed. Are you sending me to jail? Goodness me. Let's go read. Oh, maybe this person? They're making a retainer at the moment. A Lalafell retainer by the looks of it. Well, they have some cute panels. And they have a cute little VTuber. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that. Those of you on TikTok, thank you so much for hanging out tonight. I appreciate it. Powers, thank you so much for all the gifts. My head off because there is no raid function on TikTok. So good night, TikTok. Bye. For those of you on Twitch, TikTok is gone now. We can talk shit about them. No, I'm kidding. For those of you on Twitch, like I said to Law, I'm probably going to stream in the morning, I think, maybe around 9-ish, maybe 9:30. So if you guys are around, come and say hi. Yeah, we're gonna stream some more Final Fantasy, I think, because I'm really enjoying Final Fantasy. I know there are other things on my schedule that I'm meant to be playing, but I'm really just enjoying Final Fantasy right now. So sorry, not sorry. For now, yep, we're gonna go and read Peachy Clementine. They look really cute and sweet. So we're gonna go and do that. The cozy vibe, the ADHD, all those fun things. So thank you guys so much for hanging out tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed playing games with me and hanging out with me. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow, or Thursday, or Friday, or someday. And I'll catch you guys. Bye. Oh yeah, these are my socials and my Discord. I always forget that the raid thing takes a long time to do its thing. So this is awkwardly gonna be talking until it ends and cuts me onto my offline screen. Ha 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 ha.